Looks weird to see us up on the screen there, and I only can see a couple of us, of council members. So good evening, everyone. This is the June 17th, 2020, almost in 2019, Cottage Grove City Council meeting, which I am calling to order. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. For those in the audience, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, will the clerk please do the roll?
Councilmember Mills.
Here.
Councilmember Dennis.
Here.
Councilmember Thiede.
Here.
Councilmember Olson.
Here.
Mayor Bailey.
Here. Before we move to number 4, which is open forum, I did want to read a kind of a prepared statement as relates to open forum and the meeting this evening. Now that we are back to holding city council meetings in person, things are obviously a little different with social distancing protocols in place to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Because of the reduced capacity of our council chambers due to this distancing requirements, and recognizing that some residents will be more comfortable attending the meeting virtually, we are providing for public input via Zoom. You can go to our webpage at cottagegrovemn.gov, click on the Public Meetings quick link box, and then the link to the June 17, 2020 meeting for the various options if you would like to speak during open forum or for any regular agenda items. Again, the city is working hard to make adjustments based on the state's COVID-related guidelines. We want to be transparent, accessible, and inclusive, and we hope these measures will help accommodate everyone who wishes to participate in the open and public meetings. So with that being said, the next thing on our agenda this evening is open forum. So I'm going to go ahead and open the open forum portion of our meeting. And I don't know that there's anybody in the audience here, so I'll wait just to make sure that we don't have anybody online. Is that Mr. Gorman?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, I was on mute. I am here from Northern Natural Gas.
Oh, okay. So are you here for the item that's on our consent agenda?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak on an open forum? All right. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close open forum, and we'll move to, for council, move to number 5, which is adoption of the agenda.
Move to adopt the agenda.
I have a motion by Councilmember Dennis.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Thiede. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is presentations. We do have 2 presentations this evening. The first one is a presentation from the Advisory Committee, for the Advisory Committee on Historic Preservation, and it's regarding a service recognition for, I know her as Bev Gross, but it's on here as Beverly. So Bev, I know you said you would like to say something before we present you with something, so if you want to just go on up over there.
Good evening, Council. I want to thank John Burbank for putting up with me for 17 years. I have been through a lot of changes in Cottage Grove in my 84 years, but nothing like what's happening this year. Something is telling us that we need to slow up a little. History is very important in Cottage Grove. After all, we came after the Indians. We still have more to accomplish. I hope our history group has learned something from me and will continue with Cottage Grove history. We need to inform the new people of our town how important it is where they are living. I have enjoyed history many years. As being in the youngest of our family, I followed my father whenever he went, because he managed the Washington County Rural Telephone Company in our home. I got to visit a lot of people. He was a great storyteller, and I guess I learned from him. It's time for me to sign off. It's been a rewarding journey for me, and I will keep in touch. Worrying won't stop. the bad stuff from happening. It'll just stop us from enjoying the good stuff. Stay well, stay safe, wear your mask, and it's far from being over. Obey the rules, and God bless you all.
Very nice.
So what I'd like to do is, if council, we have to kind of be careful with the social distancing thing, but we do have a plaque that we would like to present to you, Bev, on behalf of the city of Cottage Grove and all of us up here and the citizens. You've been amazing for helping us with the history of our community. From the first time I was on the planning commission to council to mayor, your involvement in the Historic Preservation Commission taught me a lot about our community, and I love this community, as you know. Grew up here myself, not as many years yet as you've been here, but it's always been great to see and hear the history of this great community. So, council, you want to join me down in front? Should we take our masks? Let's have, yep, we'll just spread out as best that we can. Thank you. All right, well, it's finally, I get to give you one of these. So this is just a small token of our appreciation to Beverly Gross. And it says, "In sincere appreciation for your service to the city of Cottage Grove, Minnesota, and it's specific regarding the advisory committee on historic preservation, dated April 2003 through March of 2020, which is absolutely amazing. Like I said, it's been a great run for you, and I know you're not like leaving us. You're gonna keep active and still make sure that we're doing what we need to do to remember the history of this. That's good. We want to. So on behalf of myself, the council, and everybody else, I want to say thank you and congratulations. And
Thank you so
here's a
much.
plaque for you.
Wow, this is fantastic.
There we go.
I have 3 other ones, so I'll see if I can get it in there.
I bet you can. I bet you can.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention, because I've been the a liaison to the historic preservation for many years. And I've always been amazed at the things that you guys come up with and the history. It's so enriching and fun, especially history where you're really, that's where you're at, you know. I never really got into, reading all the history about way over in Europe or something like that. And you're not there, but you're right in it. And
We have it here.
it's fantastic.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Yes.
Did you, Justin, I know you're a current liaison, did you want to say anything?
I did.
He did. He's-
I have had the opportunity to get to know Bev and Bud and work with them on historic preservation, but also just community events since I joined the council in 2008. There is nobody that I have learned more from about this community than this wonderful lady to my left. John Burbank knows a bunch of stuff. I mean, you could spend a month talking to John about this community and the history and the people, and that's the tip of the iceberg for what Bev brings to the party. There's literally nothing you can point to as a historic site in our area, whether it's Gray Cloud or Cottage Grove or anywhere in South Washington County that she can't tell you a story about. And having had the opportunity to talk to her about the Langdon School, Shepherd's Woods when you used to play over there, the Mars family and that cemetery by McDonald's. I could cite a number of those, as we all could, and I learned it all from you. And even growing up here, you just don't absorb that until you have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's truly passionate about it. She is the keeper of the flame when it comes to the history of this community, and she will be sorely missed on the Historic Preservation Commission. But here's the thing, those of us who know Bev know that she is not a wallflower, and she will not stay silent, and there will be things that she will still bring to the table and communicate, and she'll keep us all on our toes. And I'm so grateful for all of your contributions.
Thank you so much.
And just for having you be part of this community, because truly this community, it seeps out of you in every step that you take, because you know so much. You're walking history, honestly, and it's a gift, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, there we go.
All right.
Thank you. All right, great way to start the meeting there, so that's awesome. Next on our presentations this evening is a public safety update, and our Director of Public Safety, Pete Kerner, will get us started on this item. And so I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. Tough act to follow.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to give an update on the police division. And really what I want to talk to all of you about is all the training that our officers do, how we hold our officers accountable, some of the technology we have, such as cameras. And then I also want to get into, I have Deputy Director McAllister here, and he's going to talk a little bit about a newer initiative that we've been doing with our case management program. And then to follow that up, I just kind of want to reemphasize a lot of the community outreach and things that we do. So, but before we get into that, I want to bring up with community engagement and the fireworks. This was a very difficult decision. We're the last city around that I know of, but we've had to make the decision that we'll cancel. There hasn't been any updates on the executive orders. Right now, it's still, you can't have large gatherings of over 250 people. And with all the efforts that went into getting the donations and everything, it just wasn't an appropriate time. We're not at that point where we can do the fireworks safely for the community. And then another concern we had is when each city was saying, yep, they're canceling, all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, if we're we couldn't violate the executive order, but if we were the ones that had it, what would that do to our community and our resources too? So I know later in the comments, Mayor Bailey, we had a great meeting last night with the Lions, and I'll leave it, you can kind of talk about some of the planning and actually the excitement. There a lot of disappointment, but a lot of excitement with some of the new ideas too, so. Before I just kind of want to read, it's kind of, I took a lot of our values that we have and our vision, our mission statement, but I feel as though I need to reemphasize this again, that the Cottage Police Department works in partnership with the residents and business owners we serve to provide immediate and compassionate public safety services, ensuring a high quality of life for those who live and work in the city of Cottage Grove. The Cottage Police Department is committed to adhering to the highest ethical and professional standards of our profession, creating a culture reflective of the community we serve. Our department is dedicated to continually building public trust through community policing and with updated and improved training. We are honored to serve as guardians in our community, upholding the values we all hold dear. I also put on our mission statement here. It was about 5 or 6 years ago. It was employee-driven, police and fire. We all had a workshop together and we came up with a new mission statement, and I think it still holds really true. So the Cottage Public Safety collectively serves our community compassionately, providing protection of life and property. We do this with honor, integrity, pride, and professionalism. And I think everything that's been going on, we're sickened by it just like everyone else. But what it says there in the mission, that's really what you get here. And I can't overemphasize the compassionately. That's what I'm most proud about. I'm a community member. I grew up here. Our officers, you have great staff. And with everything going on, public safety, it's easy for me just to throw out stuff and respond right away. And I've kind of sat back because I really want to listen. Even though I think I have the right answers, I know I don't. And until I really take the time to listen, I don't think we'll get any further. So you'll see public safety, we really have our ears wide open right now and we're listening to our community. And we do look forward to the conversations too. Some of them are difficult, but they need to be had and we need to listen. With that, I'll start with our standards and training. Minnesota, our officers are licensed, and every active peace officer, we have to have 48 post credits every 3 years. There's some mandatory things in there. We have to do use of force training. Every 5 years, we have to go out and do pursuit driving. So there's a lot of requirements. On top of those training, then there's anything above, it's to the officer's discretion. And if an officer wants to work on like an interview class or domestic violence, there's a lot of electives that we can take to get there. And it says here, 48 credits every 3 years. Our department, just with our mandatory, our 6 to 8 trainings that we do every year, plus our patrol onlines, our officers get in excess of 150 to 200 post credits. So we're really, really well trained. The only challenge sometimes with our training is when we train more, officers kind of want time off. So we're always juggling with that. But we more than satisfy any of the objectives out there. A couple years ago, the Post Board did change too with the 3 areas: crisis intervention and mental illness crisis, conflict management and mediation, and recognizing and valuing community diversity and cultural differences to include implicit bias. Before this even came out, and I'll get into that, our department's been doing this. We brought in some phenomenal speakers. We have some phenomenal instructors internally too, so. Another learning tool that we use is we work through the League of Minnesota Cities through their patrol online training. It provides all of our mandates, our OSHA mandates, like bloodborne pathogens, but there's a lot of electives on there as well. We cover use of force, when we can use deadly force, and the Post Board requires every year that we have those classes. So this way it tracks it, we get a certificate when we're done. And there's a lot of additional things. They've started putting some management and leadership, as it says, a lot of stuff on mental illness, and they're updated by the league's attorneys, so it's top-notch training. So our officers with that, just by doing all the required ones on there and some of the electives, you can hit your objective for your license, but we go above and beyond that. Department training. I put a picture on here, and it's actually a next slide too, but a couple of years ago we had Booker Hodges. He's the Assistant Commissioner of Public Safety right now. He came in, he did some implicit bias training for our department. We've had a couple different speakers come out for community diversity. I think our first time was Craig Wooler when he first got promoted, that we brought in an instructor. And when you bring in outside speakers, they're expensive, but it's worth it. You guys have to listen to me every council meeting. Can you imagine if I was doing the training? So it's nice for them to get a variety of instructors that come in and practical experience. A couple years ago, the Public Safety Board also paid to have a group that came and did autism awareness. They did it kind of as a fundraiser where, they provided them a stipend for coming in. We do a lot of conflict resolution classes. Crisis intervention team, that's a 40-hour class. Our goal is to get every patrol officer through that 40-hour class. We've been fortunate, Washington County gets grants that pays for our officers, and we send 6 to 8 through that every year. And every time I'm like, okay, we're at 100%, then someone retires and we have a new officer. So it's an ongoing cycle, but we're making sure we get everyone to go through that 40-hour class. The trauma-informed response class that we sponsored, that was highlighted in a lot of the local newspapers too. And then emotional survival for law enforcement. I think that's something when I talk about our strategic initiatives, we always talk about, officer wellness and work-life balance. And later I can kind of share with going through with Kent Williams from Breach Point. It was kind of a game changer for a lot of our officers. So we're doing some fabulous training there. Another thing that when you start hearing about, is your department doing this, are you doing that? You guys have been a part of the Hero Center discussions for, I think we've been 10 years, before it was built. So all of those discussions came up with, it wasn't just about a facility with a firing range. We had a match room. We have rooms where we can do searches. Really impressive. They have a simulator room that we can do all of our de-escalation. And it also provides a nice large classroom, so we can train it, whether it's as a department or train with others. So I can't say enough good things about the Hero Center since we moved in. We had some good training, and then COVID came along and it kind of canceled a lot. We had a crisis negotiator class that the FBI puts on that filled up in a day when we posted, and then it had to, we're going to reschedule. So the Hero Center is outstanding, and it allows us to do a lot of the different training. We don't do 8 hours of Matt's room. We still, every year, we have to demonstrate that we're proficient with everything on our duty belt, whether it's OC, baton, anything that we carry, handcuffs, we have to be able to demonstrate that we're proficient. So that's once a year, but every time we have a training, it might be 4 hours of some of the post requirements, and then we'll bring in a speaker or something to someone from the outside. Or, we had Sergeant Peterson 2 years ago put together a conflict resolution class from a class that he took. So we have a lot of train the trainers, and then they come in and do things for us too. Accountability. That's one thing I've heard a lot out there. We have it on our webpage, not saying that's the best place, but we do have a policy on report of any employee misconduct. We've made it super easy. If someone has a concern about our officers or any of us, they can call and talk to a supervisor. They can come to the lobby. Some people don't feel comfortable with that. We actually even put together a written complaint form, so people can fill that out and submit it. So I can tell you for every complaint I get, most time they'll talk to a sergeant. It's more of a supervisory review. Maybe the officer was rude, or they're just curious about procedure. But all of last year, we didn't have any internal affairs. We didn't have complaints. Mostly these I get are compliments. So our form actually on the webpage, we call it compliments and complaints, because a lot of people we like to recognize our officers when they're doing well. So there's our citizen complaint report, and a lot of people, whether it's good or bad, they never want to bother us. They always say, I know you guys have it. Call and let us know. We want to review our services. We do 3 times a year. We do performance evaluations with our officers now. We always want to grow, and we want to hold each other accountable. Use of force incidents. Last year, we've always had with the use of force incident, we've always filled out a use of force form, and the sergeant reviewed it before it got passed up to the captain to review. So we created last year a database to help us tracking all the use of force incidents. We actually, even with our crisis calls we go on, we're also documenting how many we go on that we don't use force. Because sometimes you'll just see, they used force on 4 incidents last year, and it's like, but we went to 250 of them. So a lot of the tools and skills we've learned, we are using. So we created a quarterly review panel. Sergeants and training officers make that up. So 2 of our training sergeants, they review all of the incidents. They look if there's any trends. And then also we use that to go back to different training scenarios and stuff. So things that we think, it could be handled different, we bring that. I thought this would be a good time with the incidents. One other thing, you're hearing a lot about chokeholds. We've banned chokeholds. I can't even, before I even started in the agency, and I started here in 1992, so we haven't been doing chokeholds. We actually, in our policy, it says no chokeholds. The only time you'd be able to use a chokehold if it was a deadly force situation and you're fighting for your life. That would be the only time, so. And most recently, as you know, we got body-worn cameras. And this was at least a 3-year process. 2 years ago, we were in front of you in the council, and we had community members had an opportunity to go over the policy, and then from there, we had some plans, and then there was some L3 sold to different, but you guys made the decision to support and we went all in. We redid all of our squad cameras. We have cameras throughout all of our interview rooms, the detention area, as well as now the officers are all wearing body cameras, and it's been a really, I hate to say it, there's no wood to knock on, but a very smooth deployment. We're learning the system, and it's been good. So, and that's all about officer accountability. Even when we got the cameras, if someone calls up and says, I thought the officer was rude, or this, it's great to sit down with them, and we have good conversations, and we'll show them the video. Some people still will dispute, and that's what our court system's for too. So we don't argue with everyone. They have their day in court as well. But I think this is a great system. Actually, today there was an article about the Minnesota LESO program, Law Enforcement Support Office. Like dozens of other law enforcement agencies, we've been part of the Minnesota program since the late 90s. We utilize the program almost exclusively for our multi-jurisdictional SWAT team. On the side, in the article, it just said that Cottage Grove is one of the tops in Minnesota for procuring items, and we do. And you'll see the list. The majority of the stuff we get are for our EMS. We've gotten gauze bandages. We have there's the compacts. If all the officers now have it, if someone were to be shot, they can stuff the wound right away. So we got stretchers. We did get, and I'll get to the list, but one thing that has also come up is we did obtain an armored vehicle, the MRAP. We've had an armored vehicle for our SWAT team for years. It shows up at our public open houses. It's kind of the thing that people gravitate towards, but it's up in Stillwater. So we did obtain, it was free of cost to be used by our multi-jurisdictional SWAT teams, which did not have a personal carrier like it in this area. So, sorry, the way I wrote that, it's not, but basically it's in Stillwater. And if we need that armored vehicle, if there's a barricaded situation, a gunman or something that's shooting with a high-powered rifle or something, we have it right in Cottage Grove, so can respond, because the one from Stillwater will take about 40 minutes to get here. A lot can happen if there's an active shooter situation. We're already trained, our officers going right in their squads, so, but it's really, we demilitarized it, and all those costs were covered through forfeiture funds as well. So the SWAT team had been talking about having a second vehicle for there, and we'd actually, with the length of our county, they've talked about having 3, but when it's only used once or twice a year or 3 times, it's hard to justify a budget addition of $500,000 to $750,000. But it's one of those things that I think people feel uncomfortable talking about as well. But it's one of the tools we need to have. You know, one of our main lines is to protect and serve. When things go really bad, you know, that's when we call our SWAT team and they can come out with the appropriate equipment. Here's just kind of a list of a lot of things we've did. There was one item in the article that talked about us requesting riot gear. We did, and it, with that, we wanted the language translators that you see there. We actually have 2 of those. They're pretty high tech, you know, came with the megaphone, but just all the things you can see there that we have the CPR mannequins, training padded suits, AEDs that we're able to get through this, portable stretchers, N95 masks. We got a lot of our PPE through this program as well. So just in closing with this, the program has provided incredible cost savings and supplements training for worst case scenarios. Aside from the training, the equipment is seldom used and is rarely, if ever, visible to the public we serve. The Cottage Grove Police Department, we are very aware and sensitive to how this equipment is viewed by many in society, and our department has gone through great lengths to use it only when necessary during dire circumstances where there's an imminent threat and danger to the general public we serve. We'll bring it to high-risk warrants and things, but the equipment, it's there. You know, now the night vision goggles and the thermal imagers and stuff, we don't have a lot of barricaded type incidents, but we're prepared. Most of the time, this equipment is used for a missing child out in the Ravine Park, and, you know, if we have to do a field search or something. So it's a great way for us to get things, and it saves us immensely with our budgets. Officer wellness, this continues to be one of our highest priorities with our strategic initiatives, just our philosophy in our department. I know Craig always talked about work-life balance. I think I brought that philosophy, and I think if you ask our officers, they all know that we take care of each other. And it's from the bottom up. Every single one of us takes care of each other with our wellness. We're very concerned, and we want everyone to have long careers. The 30-year officers they're not out there as much anymore. People are leaving law enforcement at alarming rates, and we need to make sure we're taking care of each other. Currently what we're doing is we do contract with a mental health specialist. If an officer has any issues, even if it's something at home, they can contact Steve Wickelgren, and he's gone on ride-alongs with them. They might meet at the office. It's just been a great resource, and I don't even know who uses them. I just get back invoice, you know, it's Officer X, Y, and Z, you know, use the services. But finally, and then emotional survival and law enforcement training. It's Breach Point. He's a commander. He was down in a suburb of Chicago, and he does an outstanding presentation. He basically takes everything that Dr. Gil Martin used, and I had an opportunity to meet him in 1998, and it was fabulous. I wish every one of our officers, when they start, they can go listen. It talks about burnout, worrying about things you can control. He's outstanding. He brings it to a whole new level. He's been there. He's had some tragedy in his life with his own family and partners. He also does a family day, and I brought my wife with, and everything he talked about, all cops do, she was rolling hysterically. So he really, and to her, she even said that's a game changer. All of a sudden, she's like, oh, you know, we don't come home and talk about the terrible things we see. We're just, how was your day? Fine. And he really talked just how we can, you know, outlets and how you release that stuff and how you communicate. We're also heavily involved with the critical stress debrief team. Officer Mike, or Detective now, Mike Vandervoort is actually the president of the group in the Metro. So anytime we have a really bad incident, whether it's a death or terrible crash, we call the team out. And we've also started a new orientation for our officers. During the police, their first 2-week academy, we actually had their families come out and meet some of the officers. I say a few words, and a couple of the officers talk to them about, you know, and early warning signs if your loved one starts saying this or that, you know, make sure that we take care of each other. So that's been outstanding. So there's the new orientation. We started officer mentors. So we all have our field training officers, but you know, when you started a job and whoever's training you, and maybe you didn't feel comfortable asking them questions, this just gives you a senior officer with, you know, if you just need to vent and say, I don't think I'm doing anything right, what do I do? Or just someone to give advice. So we started the officer mentors. You see the 2 books there, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. That's kind of what Kent Williams based a lot of his stuff on. When our officers start, our federation started buying these and giving them to the officers, and we encourage them to read it. It's a great book. And now they've also purchased the I Love a Cop, so they give that to their families as well. So, and you'll see their yearly check-ins. That's something we've proposed to start doing in 2021. It's not something that I'm proposing, it was something that the officers came to me. It's a once a year that they go in and talk to someone. It's a kind of a neck up kind of check, just make sure everything's okay. A lot of our neighboring agencies have been doing it. Woodbury started last year. West St. Paul, I believe, started like 2 years ago. There's just some question right now on who do we service with, because you know, Woodbury has someone, we already have some, so we just need to find the right person. But that's something that we'll be discussing in budgets this year too. And then most recently, Officer Vandervoort, Detective Vandervoort there was there. We've been working with Senator Bingham and some other people at the state on new legislation. It's about with the critical stress debriefs, and it really talks about data practices regarding peer support groups and what can and can't be shared afterwards. Kind of like that doctor-patient confidentiality. We want officers after a critical incident to be able to talk about it and not be afraid that it's gonna have to end up in court or something. So they're still working on it, but this was one of the press conferences we did recently, and Mike did an outstanding job. We're really proud that he represented our department there. Case management unit. We just recently implemented this. I know you've seen in some of the updates, and this is kind of Randy's baby, so I wanted him to come up and go over a couple slides with you. So.
Thanks, Chief. I've got 30 seconds. No. I'll keep it short. Honorable Mayor and Council, thanks for the opportunity. We're all very proud of our case management unit. I think this is sort of the vanguard of what's out there, what other people are doing that's proactive. I like what Pete talked about, one of our core values being compassion. And I think the most compassionate thing you can do as a public safety agency is to find out what's broken and be proactive to fix it and prevent stuff. And really what our case management unit does is it identifies people at risk for either violence or maybe mental health crisis and trying to get them resources before it gets to that point. So that's really the goal of this. Towards that end, we sent out Sergeant McCormick to Los Angeles in February, along with folks from Woodbury PD and Washington County Adult Mental Health, to go do a ride-along for an entire week and see how Los Angeles does something similar. They do a co-response model where they have a CIT-trained officer with a mental health clinician. And so they go to mental health calls, either in emergent situations or doing long-term follow-up. And I do have a slide here that sort of illustrates those kinds of cases that would come into this. But it was really eye-opening for everybody because LA's been doing this in some capacity for, 20, 25 years. And it was an incredible experience for them. And so, at least 6 or 7 years ago, we recognized that there were problems with our system. In law enforcement, public safety is just a very small part of the system, which includes things like social services, mental health, homelessness, food, all that kind of stuff. There are still things that really conspire against getting people help. I think really communicating with other service providers and partners and agencies is challenging, to say the least. There are, laws, sometimes federal laws like HIPAA, that prevent that. And really, we started doing this sort of as a threat management officer position a few years ago. And the whole goal is really to be sort of the coordinator for these cases, recognizing that if law enforcement doesn't step up to handle some of these situations, nobody is going to. So that's kind of where we stepped in. And we plug holes, we get resources to people, we try to really, again, intervene before something bad happens. Oops. CPE can't let me do this. Okay, so just quickly, this is my final slide. What kinds of cases come into case management unit? And again, we're working cooperatively right now with Woodbury and Washington County Adult Mental Health to come up with a true co-response model where we can get a mental health clinician coming out on calls with us or doing long-term follow-up with people. There's a subset of mental illness in a community that sort of is the most challenging for us in law enforcement. It's those people who have some significant mental illness and don't realize it and aren't getting help. So we're really hoping that, and sometimes unfortunately they come into, contact with the police that isn't so good, use of force incidents and things like those. So we think if we can identify those folks and get them help before that ever gets to that point, that's a win-win for everybody. So just briefly, there's really 4 different ways you can get into our case management unit. The first one is high-risk cases. Those are people who are maybe a barricaded suspect. Maybe they call 911 a lot and use a lot of public safety resources. Threats of suicide by cop is a big one. So those people will get into the case management unit. The crisis response, the second one there, that's your typical 911 call that comes in, and the first officers quickly sort of recognize that it's a mental health issue. So we'll assign a case management officer to that one for long-term follow-up, hopefully with Washington County Mental Health. Targeted mass violence risk. This is kind of where it started 6 or 7 years ago. How do we prevent, those school shootings, those workplace violence cases, just those mass shootings in public? And again, it's the same principles. It's case management. It's recognizing warning signs and getting help to people way before they do something bad like that. And then finally, domestic violence and stalking. Again, it's case management. I don't think if you would query groups like Tubman or formerly the Minnesota Coalition for Battered Women on which agencies in the metro area of Minnesota have the best reputation for being the best at working with victims of domestic violence, I don't think anybody beats Cottage Grove. We've had a stellar reputation for years, and something we hope to continue. But that's it. So we have 7 officers total right now. They all have been trained in that 40-hour CIT course or will be getting training this year. And then also they've gotten threat assessment training. I will be conducting a 2-day course at the Hero Center in August for that. In fact, we got 60 or 70 folks from around the metro area that are going to be attending as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Great.
I've never seen Randy get through something that quick.
I was getting directions.
Okay, and then finally, I just want to do an overview of all the engagement our department does. Most of this isn't new. This is stuff that we've been doing in the department since the 90s. And I know I missed a bunch. But here's one that I think I'm most proud of is that we do the Citizens Academy. And I sure wish we could find a date that we could get some more people. We did it 5 different academies. And Captain Martin's talking about how do we expand this? Do we do a youth group? do we do during the day for seniors and things? So there's we already have the academy, so how do we reach out more people? And we've kind of even talked with Woodbury about now that we have the training center next door, that maybe we could do a joint academy as well, so. Night to night celebrations. I'm sorry, a couple pictures got in here. I'm usually the person taking pictures, but Scott Soroka thinks it's fun to watch kids whoop me in all these different competitions. But we do night to night celebrations. All of you participate with us. We usually have, at least 40 neighborhoods that come together. We also do them in our senior areas. We also do them in some of our multi-housing too. Even dunk tanks, so it's fun. We do the bikes for when kids wear helmets, they get the Dairy Queen coupon. A lot of daycares now request us to even stop by when they'll do like a bike rodeo, and our officers just do a fabulous job. Parades, Cottage Grove, I put in this picture, it's 1963. Cottage Grove PD has a long history with parades in Cottage Grove. So whether it's the Strawberry Fest Parade, the Monster Bash, we do a lot. And, and I can even expand on that with all the 5Ks that are going on. Hamlet Park and past years always had some kind of 5K going on. Community events, we're very involved, whether it be the Strawberry Fest, Oktoberfest, Holiday Train. And then there's so many, VFW almost every weekend in the summer will have some kind of benefit, I think. And they always want a fire truck to stop by and one of our squads. And you'll see more than one squad. Usually if they say it's a taco feed, all you can eat, 7 of our squads will show up to say hello. So, but we're really proud of that relationship we have. Strawberry Fest, last year we got the public safety, police and fire back in a game. It kind of went away for a few years, but that's kind of the officer wellness too, and the firefighters, that we are friends, and it's a great family event. Yes, I love donuts. We work a lot with the different schools, the PTAs. They had come to us, and Fire Chief Redenius would give them rides in the fire truck. They asked me if I would just give them rides to school. To me, that was kind of boring, just putting them in the back seat and going right to the school. So I usually stop and get them a little donut in the morning and a juice. And the other picture there, I met the crew down there. They're on break, so the kids get a kick out of it. I can laugh at myself, but I get a donut out of it, so I'm really the winner there too. So daycare, we go to a lot of daycares and do the preschool visits. Here's our CSO, Marina. She does a lot of them too for us, and that was one of our kinder care visits last year. Open house, unfortunately, we had to cancel that this year, but it was awesome. We had it last year, and we want to get back into doing that. And I can't compete with fire because they do fire prevention in the fall, so that's their day. But we will do another open house here when COVID-19, we can start lifting those. Lemonade stands, our police and fire, not just that one day when the city had the event going, all the time you'll catch our police officers and firefighters stopping and getting a cup of lemonade. Some is better than others, but it's always fun. Our public safety board, their mission is to support public safety. We have an outstanding group. Here's just a picture with Afton Apple. Every year they do a fundraiser, and we got the McGruff and Sparky costume. There's a couple things on the agenda tonight that the public safety board has donated. They get the money. We met with Cogentrix, their generous donor to our canine program. So our relationships have really paid off. Our business community really supports us, and we always want to build on this. Here was something that was kind of near and dear to a bunch of us. We want to expand on this. We started with the Pink Patch Project, and of course, everyone has been touched at one way or another by some form of cancer, and this was just one we started with, was the Pink Patches. It's a kind of a national thing. We have some ideas for this year. One of our reserves is, I can't announce it yet, but you guys will, it's pretty cool, and it goes way back in our city's history. So we have the School Resource Officer Program, Park High School, Cottage Grove Middle, and Oatman Middle School. Justin was recently promoted to sergeant, but I just thought it was a great picture of him on the first day of school that I had to share it again. We've also taken this one step further. We have all of our patrol officers do an adopt a school. So every day when schools start, we have an officer check in with the school. They get to know the staff. They get to know the parents dropping them off. And we build a lot of relationships that way. Sometimes the teachers just might say, hey, can you come in and talk about bullying? Can you come in and talk about it? So it makes us more approachable, and it's a first name basis, so. And here's one example. Last year, Armstrong School did a movie star day for the kids, and they needed some security. So our officers went down there and gave them the Hollywood experience, and we did that, and they had all their parents and their performance, but our officers just, I think they had more fun than the kids too, so. We're in the classroom. Here's Captain Martin doing some CPR training, and so we get asked to do a lot of that, and we're busy, but we never tell them no. We always make time for our community. Here's some of the pop-up events that our Parks Department is doing. They have a fire truck will show up and hose everyone off, and then we get to hand out the popsicles and stuff, so that's another great thing, and it was cool that the Parks Department allowed us to be a part of it, so. This year, Randy, you made another slide. We started the Lights On program, and I shouldn't say we joined the group. It started in Minneapolis. Scott Soroka knew the group, and just in real short, what the Lights On program is, if we pull someone over that has a headlight or tail light open, we do give them a ticket, but it's for them to go to Duffy's in St. Paul Park, and they'll replace their headlight or tail light free of charge. So it's kind of one of those that we need people having operable lights, we need them having their brake lights working, but some people don't have the money for it, and it's a phenomenal program, and I know all the officers that I hand out one of these vouchers, they said it's pretty cool to see the smile, because when you're walking up with that piece of paper, you know everyone's like, oh, here comes the ticket, I didn't need this, and then when they find out they're getting a headlight replaced for free, they're like, oh my, so it's a great program and hope to continue with it. We've partnered with Sawashko Cares the last few years. As you know, like before winter breaks, different school breaks, a lot of the kids in our community don't have lunches or breakfast. So Sawashko Care kind of start coordinating. They get meal packs for all the kids. It's very difficult for them to deliver the 130 plus to the kids in one afternoon. So our police and fire, we all join forces and drive around the community and get them dropped off in a couple hours. And it's a really fun event. So as you can see in that picture, it's not just the police, it's our fire partners as well. This, actually just last month, we got involved with Washington County, did the food distribution. Councilmember Olson, it was a crazy amount of people. There was a lot of planning, how we got people in, so we didn't want them blocking traffic, but so we offered a lot of support there, and Friday actually, they're doing one in Woodbury, so. COVID-19 response, that's changed everything. One area, one family asked us, they said, it's our son's 5th birthday, can you guys do, we're having a parade. They asked us, and we're like, heck yeah, we'll come over. Police went, fire went, our public works director, he was there. We had a plow truck, and it took off from there. One person posted that, and after that, we were getting a lot of requests, so it was outstanding. We were getting about 8 of these a day. And then also we advertised too that for our people that may be alone or elders, to call us, and we would check in on people, especially if you live out of town and your mom or dad lives in Cottage Grove, we were doing checks on them just to make sure that everyone was okay. Even if it was, we'd stop in, hey, if you need a gallon of milk, we'll run to the store and grab it for you. So it was a lot of fun. We finally had to say, summer's here, we need to get back to, things have, gotten busy, but it was outstanding. And then, I don't even know what I can say about this one. It was a patrol-driven, with all the COVID-19. A couple of the officers got this great idea to do this video and ran with it with Captain Renzel, and, it was, yeah. We don't mean to pick on Officer Schaefer there, but really, and if you can see this, it was reached 133,000 people. I've never had such a positive response. We were kind of like, how are people going to take this? But it went over really well. But that just shows, hopefully it showed the human side of the officers to those we serve. It was fun. I've had people come up to me and constantly, they think this video is just great, so. We also have our Police Explorer post. This was created a few years ago, and again, this was one of our officers that came to us and said, hey, I had this in my other agency. It's a good way for us to get people involved in law enforcement. As you can see in that picture, we have a lot more females and diversity in that program too. And that's our audience that we're trying to reach out to as well. So they're a great group. They learn a lot. So and that's kind of a lot of the funding for that comes from our public safety board as well too. So. And then our police reserves, I kind of left them towards the end because without them, we wouldn't do half the community engagement we do, whether it's the community events, the holiday train, all the parades. They were even up helping out in Ramsey County at the Polar Plunge. So they don't just help out Cottage Grove, they help out all over on the East Metro. So with that, I know I missed a lot of the great things we do. I hope I answered your questions on a lot of the training and the high standards we have, but if any of you have any questions or comments,
Yes, Councilmember Mills.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Kerner. I know we've had conversations in the past couple weeks and prior to as well on different things. And I've talked to many community members as well. And the idea of waiting and listening has been heavy on my mind with our community. And I appreciate all that you shared here tonight. I think a lot of those things are pieces that our community doesn't always know. And I know it was lengthy and in-depth, but you do a lot, and the whole team does a lot. And I guess I would like to also at this moment, I have prepared a couple comments of things that have been on my heart about this, and I think it's appropriate at this time, and I'm going to share it. I do have it written down, so it comes across real clear because it's been heavy on my heart. But you know, what's happened over the last several weeks and months has been something that has been surreal, and it feels like an eternity that we're living in it and we're seeing it. In the future, this moment right now will be marked in history, and it may only be marked as a dot with a brief description. How these events are recorded will depend on how we respond and act now. And my personal want is that the next generations will read about how we worked together through a pandemic to save lives, and how we together brought change to racial inequalities, and inequalities that in the future will only be read about in history books. Right now, we live in a world of sound bites and headlines and phrases, while many of us, including myself, mean well and try to keep up with the world. We fall victim to assumptions with misinformation and become reactive without knowing all of the details. I am not perfect, but I want to do better. I'm committed to listening and to not jumping to conclusions. And I'm committed to being educated and to learn. This does not stop at any age. I'm learning new things every day. I'm committed to working together to bring change, which will be difficult and hard. So none of this will be easy, and this can only be done together as a community. And tonight, I want to challenge my council colleagues, the city staff, all of our residents, to listen and listen without jumping to conclusions. I challenge each one to be a lifelong student, to keep learning, exploring, asking questions. And I challenge each one of us to bring change in your families, in your neighborhoods, in your schools, and in our city of Cottage Grove. So may the next generations read about how we responded, acted, and brought about change, and be proud of this moment in history. Thank you. Just wanted to share some words.
No, it's fantastic. And I know that all of us are feeling the same, 100% the same, and obviously support our public safety department, but we also are I know I am, willing to listen, and we'll talk a little bit about that maybe during council comments or requests. Councilmember Olson.
Thank you so much. Excellent words by my colleague, Councilmember Mills, and, definitely, I think, very relevant to the current situation, whether you're talking about COVID-19 pandemic or you're talking about the George Floyd situation or any number of other things that have been offshoots of that. Pete, first of all, I want to thank you and I want to thank Randy and the entire team for everything that you do. I know community policing has been something that this public safety department has worked very hard at for as long as I've had the opportunity to interact with any member of the department, and that goes back to serving on the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Commission for 4 years before becoming a council member in '08. I am incredibly proud of this department, and it doesn't surprise you to hear me say that because I say that to you a lot. We tend to be trendsetters here, and it is because of the willingness for your department and the members thereof to constantly explore how do we improve. We're never satisfied. Randy has been at the forefront, and I want to give him all the credit he deserves for this, of threat assessment, to the point where he's now recognized nationally as an expert on this topic. And it's something that he was passionate about and took hold of. Mike, working up at the Capitol with Senator Bingham, which you pointed out in your presentation. These are not normal things that your average PD/public safety department does. And it's important for our residents to understand that we have a very special group of individuals in that department. I know that for years we've talked about outreach from a diversity perspective to try to lend additional diversity to our department as we see diversity in our community continuing to grow. And I know that is also a passion of yours, and so with the Explorer program, what a great way to do that. Catch them when they're young and get them interested in something they're passionate about and teach them. And I know you've talked about some diversity-focused, the Citizens Academies and things like that. So tonight, what I'd like to do briefly is just talk a little bit about, what we can do within the confines of our community to use what your team already does as a springboard to really lead the way. Our community tends to be a community that people benchmark as leaders in lots of different things. And that's not just public safety related. It has to do with all sorts of things that we do where other communities catch wind of it and then they say, wow, that's kind of neat. And they make a phone call and they ask about how we executed that. As you look forward into this budget cycle, the next budget cycle, et cetera, I will say, personally speaking, the pride that I have in this department and the pride that I have in the leadership of this department, it doesn't mean we're perfect. It certainly doesn't mean that we don't have our challenges or issues, but it leads me to really stress that I have zero interest in anything related to quote-unquote defund any department, particularly our police department. I think we need to continue to invest and continue to tap into the potential that each of the people on your department have. You have a very creative group of people, and you've created a culture where they feel like they can bring ideas forward and run with those ideas. And what we need now more than anything is we need ideas and we need execution on those ideas around citizen outreach, particularly to underserved communities, minority communities, et cetera. And I know you know that, but it's time to stop talking about it and really start digging into it with the same passion and focus that we've got with all of these other things that we do. And so whether that's, a public information officer, a community outreach officer, I know that there are other communities that have multicultural outreach groups, boards, et cetera. Those are things that I want to challenge you guys to think about as we enter this budget cycle, because coming from me as one vote, you will have my full-throated support for any sort of budgetary implication that is required in order for us to continue to build goodwill in our community. Business outreach, community outreach, all of those sorts of things. You know, people forget that cops are people. They have families. They need to eat food, they need to drink water, they need to sleep, and they deserve to go back home to their families. You know, last year we had 147 law enforcement deaths in the line of duty in this country. This year we've got 108 law enforcement deaths up to the moment in this country. I find that as unacceptable as I find any other use of force incident that results in the death of an innocent person or somebody who didn't need to die. Cops are targeted, cops get a bad rap, they get painted with a broad brush, and frankly, it's not fair. But you didn't sign up for fair. You guys know that. You wake up every day knowing that there's a core group of people out there who just flat out don't like you very much, but you still do your jobs and you do it professionally. And so full credit to you and your team for what you've done. And I challenge you and your team to continue to be leaders for this state, for this country, as it relates to what we're doing to reach out to other people and engage. You mentioned earlier listening. The challenge that we have in our society today with the proliferation of social media is people don't communicate and listen. I've had conversations with virtually every colleague on the panel about this because we all deal with it with regularity, and you deal with it more than anybody. People wait for their opportunity to respond. They don't listen to understand. They listen to respond. So what you get is you get a series of monologues instead of dialogue. What you've just shared with us is dialogue. In the community, sleeves rolled up, getting your proverbial hands dirty, interacting with people face to face, and it's what my colleague just talked about. She just talked about, we need to listen, we need to communicate, we need to want to do better. And in this age of social media, that becomes increasingly more difficult. So it requires increasingly more effort to overcome the obstacle. Hence my recommendation about a PIO or a community outreach officer or something along those lines. I know at one time we kind of had Gail Griffith serving in that role, but Gail was pulled in so many different directions that she never truly got to be that. I think it ended up on your desk more often than not when there were challenges when Craig was chief. So let's think through, what can we do? How can we continue to build on this? And thank you again so much, and thank your team. We pray for you every day, and we're so grateful for your service, and we're so proud of the things that your department does. And please never let your people forget that, ever.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll go quick.
You want to go? Councilmember Thiede, and then I'll do Councilmember Dennis.
So, great presentation, and you guys do a fantastic job. And again, I'm just going to say thank you very much. And we're very fortunate to have the group of people that we have in public safety.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Dennis?
All right, thanks, Mayor. My connection with Cottage Grove PD goes back to about 1993. I think it's been a long time. And I've always been impressed over the years with the level of professionalism and forward thought that has been demonstrated by this department. A lot of great information, material shared tonight, words said. So let me just add this, and I want to do this with a respectful tip of my cap to your predecessor, Mr. Woolery. Craig always talked about continuous improvement. You remember that quote. And so right now, there are things that are happening around us, that are happening in the world, not necessarily happening here in Cottage Grove, okay? But there's things, there's takeaways, there's learnings that we can pull out of this to have a better program, to be more sound as we go forward through time, and to manage how we conduct our professional business here to an outcome that is designed to promote the highest level of equity, quality, service, respect, dignity for all. And one thing, when you talked at the very beginning about the mission statement, I would like to just give you this as food for thought to think about, because it mentions some of those key words, but I think the addition of two little words, for all, makes that an all-encompassing document. And this is a department by the people, of the people, and for the people. Many of our officers live here. And if they don't live here, it still doesn't matter, because they come in and they have a commitment to do right by the citizens of our community. And you see that through the tremendous amount of outreach that you demonstrated on some of those slides. So I think if we can continue to do that, and some of the other things that were mentioned here, and continue on the path and the trajectory of excellence that we've had over the years, I know that very specifically, you had talked at the last meeting, Councilmember Olson had asked about some of the different things that we do, and you talked about how, we recruit people that have a certain, shared psychology when it comes to dealing with good service for all. If you look at how that translates up, we've got shift commanders, we've got command staff, we've got senior management, and then you've got the council. And we're all on board here to do the right thing by people, for all of our people. And as I said at the meeting here a couple weeks ago, to do everything that we can to make our home be a better place for everybody. So thank you, Mayor.
Well, I don't know what else I could actually say at this point, other than for the public to realize that, between our Director of Public Safety, Randy McAllister, and the rest of the council and I, we spent the first almost hour of our council meeting talking about and sharing, what we want to do and what we're doing as a public safety department, and wanting to listen to the community. Matter of fact, there'll be something happening that's being grassroots this coming Saturday. We as a council or as staff, I've been talking with our administrator about doing something that could be community-led or from a city standpoint too. So I do and absolutely can say that we all want to listen. And one of the things that I have shared with some people out there is, when I, as somebody who grew up here in Cottage Grove, and Pete, I know you have, and there's many people in this room that have, there is something special about this community, and that's why I wanted to stay here. That's why my family is here, my kids are here. I have a son who's building a house. I have another one that purchased a house locally. And we want everybody, I don't care who you are, what the color of the skin is, I don't really care. I want everybody to feel that safety, that security, that feeling of being part of a town and being part of something special. And it's funny because as a council, we've always talked, for those who've been on the council in the past too, and for years, we always talk about keeping this small town, hometown feel, right, as we continue to grow. And there's a real fine line there. And part of the fine line, of course, is community policing and making sure that, we do things that protect our police officers, but at the same time protect our community and protect our citizens, no matter who they are. And that's why we do what we do. And that's why we're all here to serve this community, whoever is in this community. So, again, thank you for sharing, because I did want you, as I was sharing, because when you see this information, I know Councilmember Olson mentioned it, it becomes a real challenge and it becomes extremely frustrating when you see things being posted on Facebook or different social media platforms where things are being said, or even frankly, earlier with the article that came out today from, I think it's NPR, because it doesn't tell the whole story. And so sometimes we have to figure out how can we get that story out. And whether we try to do it through corrections in Facebook postings or Twitter or whatever, or having you come and spend the first hour of our council meeting talking about how we are different here, but yet still going to listen and still are always learning and will continue to always learn and make it better, because it's an evolution. We're going to continue to do that going forward. So I just wanted to, again, Pete, thank you and the team, and thanks for our staff for continuing to, press forward and make sure that we are a all-inclusive community.
All right. Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Pete.
Sounds good. Next on our agenda this evening is consent calendar. Is there any items that council would like to pull on consent? Councilmember Mills?
Yeah, item C and D, please.
Okay. And I think Councilmember Dennis,
Mayor, I'll pull item I.
item I. All right. Anything else? All right, I guess we'll start with Councilmember Dennis, item I, which is a Marathon Petroleum Foundation grant.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor. I want to mention tonight and give some appreciation to Marathon Petroleum for a foundation grant award of $14,323 that they're providing to the city of Cottage Grove to support the brand-new aerial ladder truck that we have that is being completed and will be delivered here to us hopefully very soon. It's a great donation, and this is a piece of equipment that will really help to provide the greatest level of life, safety, and security for those that we serve in our community and other communities we have mutual aid with. And it was a well-needed tool, and we've all been looking forward to having this happen. So I just thank them for that and tell them to keep that money coming.
There you go. All right, and Councilmember Mills, you had C and D, which are Public Safety Board donations.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we've talked a lot about public safety here tonight, but did want to just highlight a couple important items that are being donated through some fundraising efforts by the Public Safety Board. They are donating a speed sign along with some automated external defibrillators. So I know they're both life-saving pieces, and even, the speed signs are as well, because it helps to slow down traffic, reminds people what the speed is. So these are important things for our community and to create safety. So I just wanted to say thank you to the Public Safety Board for their efforts that they help with some of those items.
Yes, absolutely. Great group that definitely does good for fundraising for these special projects and special items. Seeing nothing else was pulled on consent at this point, I will look for a motion to approve consent.
Move consent.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Thiede,
Second.
second by Councilmember Olson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So if you were here or listening for anything that was on tonight's consent calendar, all of those items have been approved. 8 is approved disbursement. AA is pay the bills.
Move to pay the bills.
All right, I got Councilmember, all right, Dennis made the motion.
Luray did.
Okay, Councilmember Mills made the motion.
I'll second.
Councilmember Dennis seconded. Thank you. I wasn't sure. I heard it both ways there. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 9 is public hearings. There is none this evening. 10, bid awards. There are none this evening. 11 is regular agenda, and we do have one item this evening, and that is the facade improvement program applications. And Matt Wolf is going to take us through this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Bailey. Good evening, City Council members. A little bit of background as we get started. First, a facade improvement program is used by communities across the country. Usually it's to incentivize qualifying exterior improvements to commercial buildings. Our purpose of what we established ours for is to help beautify buildings, increase consumer awareness of businesses, and sustain a healthy commercial stock within our community. The City of Cottage Grove EDA started this facade improvement program last year in 2019 with $25,000 in funding. The recipient of that award last year was Oasis Chiropractic at 7424 East Point Douglas. You can see the pictures here of what that end product looked like. First, in the upper part of your screen is of what that facade was before the project was undertaken, and then the lower picture is what it was, what the end project was after completion. The 2020 facade improvement program, it was awarded another $25,000 as part of the 2020 budget. The 2020 facade improvement program was marketed to existing businesses and commercial property owners. This consisted of mailing an introductory letter along with the brochure to all businesses and commercial property owners. Additionally, staff did reach out to those properties and businesses of interest with program details. This year we did receive 4 applications. It should also be noted that we did have a couple businesses that were also interested, but however, due to COVID-19 and some financial constraints, they had to put off those projects for subsequent years. So each application that we received was submitted and is reviewed based on the following criteria. First, location within the City of Cottage Grove. We'll go over that priority map here in just a second. Ability to encourage improvements to surrounding businesses. Ability to improve appearance and attractiveness of an area. Consistent with the comprehensive plan. Compliant with city codes, and then priority is also given to local businesses over national, regional tenants. And then finally, building owners who have not previously been awarded a grant would be considered before those who have. So what we have before you then is back in 2019, we established this project. We put together a priority map of the 2 different zones we were looking to support with the program. First priority, Zone 1, covers all the commercial districts within the 80th Street Commercial Corridor as well as the Jamaica Avenue Commercial Corridor. The priority Zone 2 in blue is the area located at 70th Street and Hinton and 70th Street and Keats Avenue, and then anything along West Point Douglas. So the first application that was received was at 7998 Hardwood Avenue, which is Culver's. This is located just off 80th Street exit. This building is solely used for the Culver's restaurant, and it is owner occupied. The project consists of an exterior painting of the building, new gooseneck lights, new main entrance door, new exterior signage and awning replacement, and patio umbrella replacement. In total, the project has $86,801 in eligible expenses based on our project guidelines. This represents a total of 71% of a public to private funding ratio. And then what you see before you today is the concept of what they would like the building to look like once complete. To note, again, the awnings would be completely replaced. This upper part of the building will be repainted. There'll be new signage, and then there'll be also new gooseneck lights that will be installed as part of the project. The second application is from Jamaica Square at 8475 East Point Douglas. This is located just off the Jamaica Avenue exit of 61. The building is a multi-tenant office and retail building that currently contains Papa Murphy's Tobacco Store, National Karate, Cottage Barbers, Bella Nail and Spas, and currently has 2 vacant units. This project consists of repainting their entire building for a 2-tone look, replacing the awnings to match the newly painted building, installing new lighting fixtures on the exterior of the building, and installing a new monument sign for the building. In total, the project would have $63,670 in eligible expenses based on our project guidelines, and this represents a 61% private to public funding ratio. So the picture above your screen is the current Jamaica facade. You can see it has a 2-tone look as well as 2 different style color awnings. The picture in the south is actually what the building owner submitted of what he would like the building to look upon completion, or give a kind of a concept of what he would like to see. This would be 2 tones offsetting each other, and then these awnings again would match the paint color as well. And then we'd have new lighting as well. So one of the things that is not included in our project guidelines is parking lot replacement. However, in 2019, when this applicant applied to the program, he did not receive funding, but we did ask. One of the issues of concern has always been with this property is there's been some major potholes and issues with the parking lot. So as part of the moving forward, when discussing with the owner, we really wanted to address those issues. Last year, one of the things he did address was he replaced this area of the parking lot that is currently here. You can see the offset of where his property line ends. So that was replaced. Part of his application this year is he is looking to replace the area in orange. Again, these aren't covered under our program guidelines, but we do look at the totality of the application and the scope of the work of what is to be done. Originally, when it was brought before the EDA, what was because he considered a complete pavement reconstruction, which is removal of that asphalt in that whole area and reconstructing. Recently, he did get a bid from a new contractor, and he's looking to mill and overlay now that orange area. So one of the things that we've done as a staff is our assistant city engineer, Amanda Meyer, our street superintendent, Gary Orloff, and myself went out and looked at it. And and what we found was this area in the south, based on their recommendation, that would be sufficient for a mill and overlay, and that would last. It's not too bad. However, in the north, and you can see these points along the map, those are areas of interest. They're not necessarily potholes, but there are areas that the contractor who submitted this map deems an area of interest. That area in the north, though, however, is substantially worse and would require, a long-term fix. So one of the things that we are trying to work with the building owner moving forward with is with this new scope of work that he's talking about, is trying to get, maybe a mix of the two, instead of just doing one way or the other based on what we're seeing, and some expertise within our staff is, can we get a mix of just doing some project pavement reconstruction in the north and then mill and overlay in the south. So that's one of the things to keep in mind, and one of the things that we're working with the building owner. The third application is 7750 Harkness Avenue South, Shops at Gateway North. The Shops at Gateway North is a multi-tenant building off Harkness Avenue north of 80th Street in East Point, Douglas. This building is a multi-tenant commercial building occupied by Jimmy John's, Anytime Fitness, Rustic Floral Boutique, Sushi Cafe, State Farm Insurance, and they currently have 3 vacant units. This project consists of a new canvas canopy covers, painting the existing chain canopies, replacing all tower, top, and wall covering sheet metal with modern black sheet metal, replacing all exterior lighting fixtures, and repairing and painting existing tenant upper EFIS storefronts eggshell and black. In total, this project has $55,000 eligible expenses based on the project guidelines. It should be noted that the applicant did submit a range of $55,000 to $75,000, so it could be higher than the $55,000 that is listed here. But overall, this $55,000 would represent a 55% public or private to public funding ratio. So the applicant did submit a schematic for what they are trying to do with the building. You can note on the southern picture is what the building facade currently looks like, and the north is what they're trying to accomplish. Also to note, the building owner is planning to do this project in phases. The first phase is going to cover what we discussed. This is replacing of the awnings, repainting of some of these metal and chain canopy covers, removal of these old outdated fencing and some of this decorative, replacing all of the lights along the side, and then repainting of the upper EFIS that we talked about, which is here. Again, though, the thing that will not be touched this year, that is not part of this project, is the reconstruction of these parapets that you see in the northern picture there. The final application was from 7501 80th Street South, Hillside Professional Building. This is located on 80th Street, just across from the City Hall. This is a 4-story apartment building, this is proposed to be turned into a 4-story apartment building. The proposed project would consist of a restoration of the exterior stucco finish. In total, the project is $10,185, and the applicant requested $5,000 or just over $5,000 in funding. Since this application is substantially just for general maintenance items, this is something that is not covered under program guidelines. So based on the program guidelines that are a part of the facade improvement program, the recommendation is that the project submitted by Culver should be awarded the 2020 grant amount of $25,000. However, due to current economic conditions, the recommendation is that another $50,000 be taken out of the EDA Trust Fund to support the Jamaica Square project and the Shops at Gateway North projects. Currently, we were seeing businesses and commercial property owners struggling with lease payments either being delayed or having to do forgiveness with some of their tenants. Additionally, we view these projects would ensure a healthy commercial stock is available in our community and continues to be available, and would support economic growth through the support of both construction trades and employment in the community. We further believe these projects meet the following criteria. They are visible from Highway 61, which is again in Priority Area 1. These projects are comprehensive and have a high leverage of private to public investment. They improve the appearance of the 80th Street and Commercial Avenue commercial corridors, are consistent with our comprehensive plan, and supply an attractive and updated commercial units for future businesses into our community. Finally, any project contracts, all contracts, if these projects move forward, these applicants need to ensure that the funds will not be dispersed until the project is substantially complete. This program again requires all the businesses or property owners to submit copies of all paid invoices or receipts along with photos of the work that is completed before they receive any funds. And again, only after all items are found to match the application are the grant funds awarded to the applicant. So with that, before you today is two recommendations. One is for, first, the Culvers of Cottage Grove to receive the $25,000. Again, I just want to point out too that this is coming out of the EDA Trust Fund. It is part of the 2020 budget, but these funds that do support this project come from that EDA Trust Fund as well. The second motion then before you is the additional $50,000 for Jamaica Plaza and the shops at Gateway North. And with that, Mayor and City Council, I'll turn it over for comments and questions.
All right, sounds good. Council, any questions on any of this? All right, I do know that the EDA took this up. Normally, as you mentioned, we would be just doing one, but one of the things that we thought this year is if we have businesses that are interested, or owners, business owners that are interested in reinvesting in our community, even during these kind of crazy times with COVID, maybe this is one of those special circumstances where we can offer assistance because they're going to reinvest in our community to creating a better business environment. So we've got two motions before us then. Yes, Councilmember Dennis.
Mayor, I can make the first motion.
Yes,
for
go
you
right
if you
ahead.
like. So I motion to approve the Culvers of Cottage Grove project with an award letter and a contract for $25,000 as part of the facade improvement grant program.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Dennis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Thiede. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Then we have number two.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to authorize approval of an additional $50,000 of funding for the program through the EDA Trust Fund with an award letter and contract for $25,000 to Jamaica Plaza LLC and $25,000 to Crown Estates Family LLP, which is Shops at Shops at Gateway North.
There we go. We have a motion by Councilmember Mills.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Olson. Any further discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda is council comments or requests. Since we're all kind of indifferent, but I'll still go in my same order. So, Councilmember Mills, do you have anything you want to share this evening?
Well, I was just going to announce the event on Saturday.
Yes, go ahead.
And so that is a community listening event. It's going to be held at Hamlet Park from noon to 2. And there will also be, so there'll be an opportunity to speak. There is somebody who's facilitating the conversation who does this in many communities, so is very prepared in being able to do it. It was put together by a community member. And they are also going to live stream the event because they're being very sensitive of the fact that maybe not everybody could come. Unfortunately, with the live stream, you won't be able to make any comments, but you can certainly observe and watch and participate. He's still working out how that's going to work, but as far as like how to connect to it, but the plan is to have it there. So if somebody is interested and they can't seem to figure out how to tune into that live stream event, I'm going to try to put stuff on like my page. I know with the event piece, he's going to be putting things there to find that live stream so that if people cannot attend or don't feel comfortable coming out, because we will be social distancing and wearing masks and all of that, that they are still able to participate and watch. So it'll be a great event. I'll be there. I know Mayor, I believe you'll be there. We have some other from the city that will be there. Several folks will be speaking, and there'll be opportunity to share as well. So it should be a good event and kind of a good way to kind of get started, just to listen and hear what other people have to say.
Fantastic. I'll just piggyback on that
Yep.
since that was something I was going to bring up. And again, it's at Hamlet Park this Saturday, June 20th, from 12 noon to 2 p.m. It has been posted, if you will, as a meetings to be official. So council is all welcome to be there if they would like. I know Councilmember Mills, you're going to be there. I'm going to be there. And our Director of Public Safety, Pete Kerner, is also going to be there. So we'll be there to listen. So, good. Anything else?
That is it. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Councilmember Dennis.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor. I only have one thing tonight that I would like to bring up and discuss, and that is to see if we can finally get some help for folks that live over on Hadley Avenue on the west side of Highway 61. There have been continuing complaints from a number of residents who are living over there, dealing with heavy trucks and large-scale equipment that's been going up and down that roadway. And that'll be starting between 80th and 90th. So that's, even though it is a collector road, it's still a residential area with a lot of homes packed in very close to the roadway itself. And I had one person reach out to me today, and I know that we have been out there doing some different monitoring, if you will, over different times, usually for about a half hour at a time, I learned tonight. 1:25 p.m. today, there was a semi that went past. 7 minutes later, at 1:32, there was a flatbed semi with a trailer and some kind of an excavator. So we're talking about large-scale equipment. And the belief is that that equipment is going from trucks that are coming off 61 on 80th and then taking that left turn on Hadley to go south towards some of the developments that we have going on. So what I did is I kind of put my thinking cap on a little bit, and I sent out a letter earlier today to some of our staff members. And so just to kind of spark some creativity on this in terms of what we could do, and I'm not an expert on this, so I talked about, would there be a potential to possibly lower weight restrictions on the road, maybe include some permanent signage that indicates it's not a truck route, maybe look at some surveillance temporary that we could do. I mean, if we've got two vehicles in a 7-minute span, there should be something we could capture there to see that the issue is happening. Also inform some of the adjacent housing developers that their construction groups are to refrain from using Hadley and instead come off 61 at 95th and then take that back way. We're cutting through the industrial park type area. And then last but not least would be for some traffic enforcement by public safety to actually pull those vehicles, whether they want to issue citations or warnings or what have you would be up to them to do. But I'd like to see what we could do here once and for all, because this has been a long-going scenario. And again, we've been over there a few times, but here's the thing, we didn't necessarily see anything. But just because you don't see it in a limited scope doesn't mean it's not happening. So there's enough people, in fact, they even have their own Facebook page addressed to deal with this. And so I'd really like to see, in good faith, if we could do something here to help these folks. We value members of the entire community, and this would be something they're asking for help. And so I asked the staff to put on their creative thinking caps earlier today. So if there's anyone on the staff who would like to come up and address this at the podium, I'd welcome their feedback.
I'll make mention too, probably about a year ago or more, we addressed this, we've addressed it a few times. I know there's signs on each end of that road, and what is it, 8,000?
Councilmember Murphy, 15,000 pounds.
15,000?
Yep, pounds.
Which a couple of those trucks would have to be more, wouldn't they, would have to have been more than that?
Correct, 15,000 is very restrictive. Any type of commercial vehicle is going to be greater than that. Yep, but just for a little more background, and I did speak with Director Kerner here today as well. It is an ongoing thing we've been looking at. We have made different changes over the year. We've worked with code enforcement to send out letters to the business park. Councilmember Dennis is correct. With the development going on, that does create a bit of an ongoing challenge. With our city-controlled street and utility projects, it's always a topic at our weekly meetings, talking about those delivery routes. But deliveries are really the thing we see that create these issues, because delivery drivers, they're not really working directly with the contractor. They're just they get a delivery and someone's out making that delivery. And we find they follow their GPS, they enter in their GPS takes them down Hadley Avenue. So brainstorm a little bit today with Administrator Levitt as well. We have an engineering intern, he's a smart young kid. We actually want to look at some of those GPS services and see if there's a way to list it as a weight restricted roadway. And we can't list it as closed, things like that, but if it could come up with some sort of information that, hey, this is a restricted route. Average driver won't care about that, but maybe give information to those delivery drivers. The other challenge is that weight restriction is just south of North Square because we have to let deliveries get to North Square. So it's not right at 80th Street. So we're also going to maybe look at doing some advanced signage. Possibly if we can catch them, we worked with MnDOT, we can't put them on the ramp, but if we can at least get them at 80th and Hadley, gives an opportunity to maybe do something different. Once they're going down Hadley, they're committed and they're gonna do it. So we did start thinking about that today with some other options. One thing I always like to reassure people is, you are correct, that weight restriction is it's a residential area. We want people to stay out of there. It doesn't damage the roadway. That roadway actually was built to a 10-ton standard back in the early 2000s. So I do like to reassure that because there is a concern that most weight restrictions are the road can't handle it and it's gonna deteriorate faster. We know that won't happen, but either way, we wanna keep those trucks out of there. So it's certainly something we can kind of get back to our thinking hats and see what other solutions we have.
Okay, can we reach out to a couple of the developers down there and find out? I know that many times, people that work in the trades, for example, they're usually done at like 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon. So I would have to think that, you would have certain segments of the day where you would have the highest amount of vehicle traffic relative to those works that are being performed over there. So if we could maybe map that out strategically.
Yep.
But again, you guys are tired of it, I know, and we don't want to hear any more on behalf of the community. We want to make people happy here if we can, and really, if we can put this thing to bed this time, and really go after it. We don't have a council meeting until next month, so we're going to have a whole stretch of time. Normally, we might seek to have, staff put together a plan and then come back and talk with the council on it. I would rather not wait a whole month. And Mayor, would you feel comfortable empowering the staff to kind of grab this, maybe with some of these different thoughts that I put together and move forward with that so that we could at least get something going? And then maybe we can come back and have, a little bit of an update from you a month from now and see where we're at.
Yep, we can certainly do that. We'll do those different options.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. Is council good with this direction?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I agree. So yes, that's good. The one thing, I agree with you, and you made a comment about it, Ryan. Once they turn that corner, there's nowhere else for them to go. So I mean, if they do, even if they don't intend, and they see the sign, there's nowhere to go. I mean, you can't turn around. So anything, I think, like you said, you can do on the signage that before they get around that corner, that says that the access to North Square is it. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what you guys can come up with since the DOT won't let us do anything on the ramps. But it would be good to see if we could try something.
Yep, we'll certainly do that. We have some creative signs.
That was the thing in the past,
Yeah.
was in terms of signage.
Yep.
Even discussed, what if at Presbyterian Homes there, you actually put there's potentially some space to put a turnaround such that, you might not get a big semi that would be able to make that full turn, but, maybe, possibility. Also, some other alarm type of deals we discussed at times in the past, and, like way station type deal, if it was too heavy and it went across the plate, maybe alarms would go off if it was too heavy, or just, there are different things. So I'd be more than happy to kind of discuss a little bit about what was all discussed in the past too, so
Yep.
don't
No,
hesitate to.
we can certainly do that, come back with different options and an update on what we've been doing, over the next month. So we can certainly do that.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you, Mayor. I'm good.
Thank you. Anything else? That's it?
Yep.
All right.
you.
Councilor Thede?
Okay. So, I got a couple things. Number one, let's see, where did I put it? one thing that wasn't on our schedule sheet here is that the South Washington County Telecommunications Commission, Cable Commission over off of 70th Street, on Saturday, this Saturday, from 9 to 12, they are having a food drive where they're having to drop off food for the food bank. And let's see, to the Friends in Need, and then food shelf, Christian Cupboard, emergency food shelf, and the Ain Da Young Center. But different drop-off items, baby supplies, soap, toothbrushes, paper towels, first aid, reflective gear, flashlights, non-perishable food items, checks and cash. So again, 9 a.m. to noon, and that's at 6939 Pine Arbor Drive. And it'd be great if people could get over there and drop some things off. I know we got some things that we're going to take over there, so. Also, the other thing is that we all know what this week was, right?
I know what it was.
This week was when Strawberry Fest was going to start tomorrow. And unfortunately, and it was a very tough decision, quite a few weeks ago, we went through a lot of different options. Could we have it later? Could we just have bands later or change it up a little bit? Obviously, the number one issue that came into play was safety. And then finding out that it was very tough to schedule like the carnival or those kind of things at another time during the year, especially when there's uncertainties. The other thing is that, with the different sponsorship monies and things like that, we really look to get the community together, to get the crowds together and to really make it a successful festival. And the concern was, we don't know. Maybe we'd only get a fourth of the people to actually show up to take part and so forth. So in most cases, like all the sponsorship money, a lot of those kind of things are in the bank for the Strawberry Fest in 2021. But I just wanted to mention, because it actually, this year, 2020, was a perfect year for the glasses concept, and the focus is right, the 2020 vision type deal, and I guess the powers to be just didn't want it to happen, but so at any rate, you can be thinking about how much fun you could have had the next 3 days if this doggone COVID-19 hadn't hit us. So anyway, that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah.
One of the things that always happens, well, I shouldn't say always, but predominantly happens during Strawberry Fest is we also have Father's Day. So I want to take a moment today to congratulate all of the great dads out there, both in this room and in our community, and wish them well for a wonderful Father's Day. I also want to take a moment to thank the staff at Park High School and South Washington County Schools for their graduation ceremonies that they did on Sunday. Just so happens my son was a senior this year, so he had an opportunity to participate in the graduation parade, as it were. They certainly had a really tough time to try to coordinate how exactly they were going to celebrate these young people and reward them for their accomplishments. But they did a very nice job of the outdoor / drive-through parade, and then they also had a virtual graduation at 6 p.m. on YouTube that is still accessible out there, where they really honored the kids. So my hat is off to the staff at Park, and congratulations to all the graduates and their families. I also wanted to take a moment today to thank our Public Works team. Boy, I have seen our folks out there hustling. One of the things that I've noticed is there's been a lot of work going into flower beds and the center medians on many of our roadways, and they really look good. They look very good. So whoever's been doing that work looks really great. The parks are looking good and they're getting a lot of use. And I know that it's been stinking hot, which is never fun for everybody to be out working on the roads with asphalt, et cetera. But, it seems like the new way in which the Public Works team has been aligned, their reporting alignment, et cetera, seems to be working really well. The roads are fantastic, and I'm sure that's because we've got that new Alec kid working in the streets department. I'm sure that's probably the primary reason that's happening, but good work, everybody. Earlier today, I talked a bit about a desire to look at a multicultural advisory group in our community. Years ago, we used to have the Human Rights and Human Services Commission as part of our citizen advisory commissions to the city council. And we struggled to some degree to keep members on that commission. And I think largely it was because the mission of an advisory commission is to really advise the city council on policy, and there weren't necessarily lots of policy-related initiatives. But I wondered if the council would be supportive of staff doing some research and potentially coming back to us at some point with some thoughts and advice on how we might duplicate what I see in some other communities. I know Woodbury, for example, has a multicultural advisory group that works with their city council and with their public safety team. There's some other communities in the metro. I personally would be very interested in learning more about something like that and how we might put something together in our community to serve as sort of the tip of the spear, as it were, around multicultural outreach and ways in which we can celebrate the various cultures that have come together in this community. And I've talked earlier about, with the census this year, we're going to see that we've had significant growth in a number of different ethnic groups, including Hmong, Hispanic, Latino, obviously African-American groups. And so as our community becomes more diverse, I'd like to think that we can put something together where we can really celebrate that diversity and to Councilmember Mills' point earlier, do some listening and really focus on being more inclusive. So I don't know if that's something that the rest of the group would be interested in, Mayor, but I at least want to deposit that as something that I personally would be interested in learning more about, and then based on what we learn, what potential actions we might be able to work on. So I don't know if you or staff has any thoughts, but I at least wanted to bring that up, and then I had one more item.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with it. Again, it would be different than what we've had
Correct,
before. So, I mean, we can let staff kind of come back to us with some ideas and.
Yeah.
And I did see some of the information that was provided to us regarding some of the other cities and how they do it, the way they're doing it, which might be better than us having to do what we tried to do with the Human Rights, Human Services Commission, because maybe it is the way it was structured might have been not conducive to what we're really trying to get to. So, Council, are you good with staff?
I absolutely would. And Mayor, were you planning to have some listening sessions or something? I remember seeing you put a piece out on Facebook here not too long ago.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe one of the really good things that we could do would be to listen, to see what it is that some of the members of the community would like to see us do, and that way we can better provide that. So just if it's coming from the people and directed by the people, that's probably a pretty good answer.
Nope, I agree. Everybody good with that?
Yeah. if I
Councilmember
may.
Mills?
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up those thoughts and all of that. And I guess my thought is, let's wait a little bit, let's listen. And I think if we kind of also let the community bring up and staff can look at pieces together, we can work through something. I would be very open to working on something in that manner. So,
Okay.
yeah, to
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you very much. I am aware that there are numerous communities that have something of that nature that they really embrace, and typically those sorts of groups work closely with the public safety team, et cetera. And so, again, not kind of an advisory commission, because we've been there and done that, and it didn't quite fit the way that we wanted it to, but something similar along those lines. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up, Mayor, is I talked earlier about the parks, and I'm seeing lots of kids kind of out there playing, and seeing lots of basketball and lots of baseball and sort of pickup games and things. And I wondered if Zach might be able to give us a brief update based on some of the governor's guidance as it relates to youth athletics and the more formalized, sports leagues and games and things. I know he's been talking with the athletic associations, et cetera. So I'm just sort of curious what it looks like for the rest of the summer with regard to organized youth sports.
Good evening, Councilman Olson and members of the council. Felt like I was coming out of the bullpen there. Thanks for the call out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Right now, all sports are able to practice. That's high school and youth athletics, according to the governor's orders. So you're starting to see people, or teams and individuals, using our facilities more often. There's guidelines on those activities through the outdoor recreation program set aside by the Minnesota DNR, and it's pretty specific. An example is on a sheet of ice, no more than 2 pods of 10 on a full-size sheet of ice. Baseball field, no more than 25 on a field, and then you have to be separated into pods and things like that. So it's broken down pretty well and pretty specific. All sports are listed in a set of categories as far as risk. So there's high risk, moderate risk, and then low risk. And then and then the guidelines change as you are in those different risk categories. And then the sports are also changing categories too, as time goes on as well. Right now, more locally for our community, all of our association divisions seem to be encouraging practices, not games. There are some controlled scrimmages, but mostly practices. And then in-house programs, for the most part, have been canceled. Refunds have been processed to those participants. And I should say all spring and early summer traveling programs have been canceled. So tournaments, games, leagues, things like that have been canceled. And then looking more for later summer, early fall programs to hopefully get back onto the fields and courts and rinks or whatever else. Leagues and tournaments have all been canceled. And other events have been canceled, sports events have been canceled, with the exception of the NAFA softball national tournament at the end of July. They still have that proposed to play. Once again, unless guidelines change, we'll have to monitor that situation and adapt as necessary with with the governor's orders. So in summary, we're continuing to monitor the guidelines, and the situation changes weekly almost, so we're monitoring that and then authorizing access to our facilities accordingly.
But they are able to practice at this stage, hence the reason we're seeing more people out in the parks and on the fields, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Was that it, Mr. Olson? Okay. So a few items for the public, and I apologize, I have a few today. One is though, and our Director of Public Safety, Pete Kerner, did bring that up earlier, and that is officially the 4th of July fireworks in Cottage Grove have been canceled. And it's obviously due to the guidelines from that has been given to us by the state. We can't obviously have the fireworks with more than 250 people in the park. And I would just share with the public, as I shared with the Cottage Grove Lions that really facilitate this event last evening, that we were looking at every way possible that we could make this happen. But what was really going on is, as literally every other city was canceling theirs, we would expect that ours would have gotten significantly larger as it relates to the number of people there. And so in this particular case, unfortunately, we do have to cancel it. The people the businesses out there that donated the money to the fireworks, I'll be working with them to see if they'd be willing to let us hold that money for right now, because the goal, as you just heard from Zach a little bit ago, the goal would be to hopefully do something later this fall. Because just like Strawberry Fest, just like all the 4th of July fireworks and such, all these different events, other than bringing the communities together, are also in some cases fundraising events for different groups and agencies. And so what we talked about last evening with the Cottage Grove Lions Group was looking at some options later in the fall where we might do something, as an example, like an Oktoberfest or something to that effect, where we would have something at Kingston Park or somewhere in the city that would maybe have some music and almost like our fall version of a Strawberry Fest, if you will. And then we would do the fireworks at that time. So our goal is hopefully to still do fireworks into the future, as long as the COVID situation eases up as we get further into the fall. So I just wanted to, it was not a happy decision to make, but it was one that's made on erring on the side of safety and the fact that we just would not be able to control the number of people that could be in the parks or in the streets around the parks. The other item I wanted to mention to council, and it's interesting as Councilmember Olson and Councilmember Mills both have children that graduated this year as part of the class of 2020 in this interesting time. As the council is very aware, we had 2 businesses donate the 2020 senior banners that are all on the various business areas around our community, Tennis Sanitation and Leaf Line Lab. So I want to once again thank them for their donations. Being that these banners are, in essence, used once and that's all we could do with them, I actually did have some people reach out to me, some seniors and such at the various schools, asking if we were just going to dispose of them. And so in talking with our staff, I suggested that maybe we just give them away we'll do it like in a raffle kind of thing. And I mentioned it on Facebook as an option, and I was getting inundated with yes, 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 yes. So being that these items were donated to the city, or the money was donated to the city for these banners to be put up, I would like to ask the council to make an official motion to approve us going ahead and having our Scott Soroka and our communications person and Ryan with Public Works, once those banners come down next week, I believe, we will then put names in drawing if there's more than 30 or so. I can't remember how many banners we have. 34 banners. And if there's more than 34 people that want them, then we'll put them and draw names out and then have them come down to Public Works and pick them up. But to be official, I do need somebody to make that motion.
I can make it for you, Mayor.
Okay.
I'll motion that we authorize staff to carry out a banner giveaway dispersal program as outlined in the mayor's comments.
All right, sounds good. So I have a motion by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Thiede. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries, so that is official. The other item that was brought up earlier, but it's kind of funny, I'm like piggybacking off of different people here today, and we talked about the listening session that will be down at Hamlet Park on this coming Saturday. Councilmember Dennis mentioned about something that we're looking at doing from a city's perspective to listen to our community too. We're still kind of figuring that out and also looking at facilitators and such to do that. And the reason I'm bringing this up just as a side note is it was interesting. I've been kind of getting it from both sides. I don't mean in a negative way. I'm saying I've got people that would like the city to step forward and do something, and then I've had people from the community that want to step forward and do something. And so we're going to do both. We're going to hear from some of the grassroots efforts from our community and our citizens, and then a little bit later here, we will also do something from the city's perspective. So I think that will get it a lot of information in, and then the council can kind of dive into what we want to do with that information that we're getting, or different ways of communicating and such within our community. So I just wanted to mention, staff will be bringing that proposal and idea back to us in the near future. I also want to mention officially the splash pad will be opening tomorrow on Thursday, which is 6/18. So I know there's a lot of people that have been messaging me on that one, so that is cool. Finally, and especially since it's supposed to be very hot and humid tomorrow, so I think that'll be a busy place, but please do social distancing. I know we'll have the signs up. Just be careful and practice social distancing. I did get a lot of messaging today, and I know staff has gotten a few too, regarding some tree removal up at Pine Hill Elementary School. Just so the public is aware, that is a parking lot reconstruction project, a redesign, the whole 9 yards that they're doing up there, that facilitated the need to remove those trees that were in the front of the school. The trees towards the back are not. I used to go to that school, that's why it's Pine Hill. A lot of pine trees were cut down in the front. However, staff is working with the school district for a plan of how they're going to re-landscape it with trees and such after the fact. So once we get that, staff will provide that to us so we can share with the public at a future date. But there will be trees planted back. Of course, they're not going to be those tall pines, though I would share with you, if you were out there and you've seen those, some of those pines did not have many branches left on them, to be honest with you. But we'll have new trees that will go into that area. And then the last item that I had on this, speaking of banners, is I was, when we were talking about the whole banner situation with regards to the 2020 class banners, one of the other things I was speaking to our Public Works Director, Ryan, about was, and I can look out and see the banner we've got currently, but the City of Cottage Grove has a banner that we've been using in our streets. And every once in a while, we have to go back and reorder those banners. And obviously, because banners start wearing out over periods of time of being, up 24/7. One of the suggestions I would like to make for the council is I would like to see, or if approved by the council, to have our arts committee, it's our committee now, right? Kind of look at some different ideas as it relates to maybe a new city banner that we would use as years go forward here. Not that we're going to wipe everything out and start from scratch, but as we start replacing banners, is there something we should look at maybe doing something different into the future? I've been to a lot of different communities and I've seen a lot of different things. My job takes me through a lot of different towns and small towns. Red Wing has multiple types of banners. Some are metal, some are cloth. But I'd love to give it to the Arts Committee, if the council so chooses, to just kind of brainstorm some ideas and maybe make some recommendations to the council for the future and see if there's something out there. And then staff can provide kind of what our dimensions, our clamps and all that kind of stuff, so we have an idea of, what we're getting into as we go forward into this banner program. So, council, are you guys good with that? I don't know if we need a vote on that, but just to give direction to the staff.
Just a comment, as we know, when that commission first started up, we had actually gone down the road quite a bit to almost do like a community, a contest of sorts, where people were actually designing banners, and then we'd actually get them made and then put them up. Now, you might be talking a little bit more about picking one design that would get.
Maybe.
But so I think it's a fantastic idea. If we could logistically get it.
No, I think there's some people on the committee that would be excited to take a look at some of the things, give some ideas, especially if staff's involved to help just kind of
Guide it a little
give
bit.
some guidance there and maybe even give some ideas of things to look at. I think they'd be thrilled to take a look at that.
Perfect. Okay, we good, Ryan? All right, that was it for me. And so next on our agenda this evening is a workshop which is open to the public. This workshop is an important one because we're going to be talking about the community center. And we are going to keep this televised. We're staying in here. And the goal here is our Parks and Recreation Director, Zach Doctor, is going to give us some information. And just for the public, as he's setting up, maybe not, I'm hoping I'm not going to steal your thunder, is the council had previously given direction for a concept for a community center to move forward to a referendum this coming fall in November. As we all know, with the COVID situation, the economy is kind of teetering, if you will, on the edge, and we're a little concerned about, still wanting to move forward. At least I am, I should say, not specific to the council. That'll be a council decision. But as much as I want this to happen and get it before the voters, I'm concerned that we would do it at the wrong time, meaning this coming November. And so staff will be asking us for a decision tonight. Should we continue to move forward to have the referendum question be put on the ballot this coming November? Or do we want to postpone that decision until, and then maybe revisit in January of 2021 and see if there's another date, maybe in 2021 or whatever? We just want to make sure that we're good for the citizens of Cottage Grove, and the understanding that there might be some people out there right now that are hurting financially and not having to pile on that. And then the other thing that has happened since the last time we all kind of got together to talk about the community center is we heard a lot from our citizens regarding they really want something to do with water. They want some type of an aquatics, something in our community, and depends on its Taj Mahal to a splash pad or a wading pool. And so what Zach is going to present to us this evening is some options for the council to consider should we decide to move forward with a future community center and then add an aquatics component to it, and then share some of the information on cost. Hopefully that's a segue enough for you, Zach, to get us rolling.
That's a good setup. You read my notes?
Sorry if I stole your thunder there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, member of the council. Thanks for reconvening on the community center discussion. Mayor, you set it up very well, exactly how I was going to intro it. So really at the end of this session, we're hoping that we'll get guidance from the council on two things. One is what the preferred schedule is moving forward, the referendum schedule. We've been on pretty rigorous and very detailed schedule. So we'll pivot as to however the council wants to move forward with that. And then also the preferred facility option. I did hand out what the council approved, option 6, back in August of the previous year, in 2019. And that is going to be the base model for everything we do. I'll talk a little bit more of that as we go on. But then we'll add in aquatics so that the council can consider those options as the mayor had mentioned, and for the reasons the mayor had mentioned. And then also in your packet was the schedule. So that's kind of the schedule we're starting with. And then this is the facility schedule we're starting with as well. So you've seen these before, and then they're also in the packet as well for your reference. So option A is that base building that was approved back in August of 2019. You'll notice it's $21 million. It includes the indoor playground, early childhood family education, office storage for CGAA, meeting spaces, a classroom, a teaching kitchen, supporting spaces with a small stage area, performance area. It does include the sports dome, and then of course all hard costs, soft cost, site development and land acquisition included in there. You'll notice that this dollar amount doesn't match up with the dollar amount on the PowerPoint. After essentially this had the lease money taken out of the construction costs, I felt it was important to add that back in because the lease costs would come out of operational income year by year, but it's not going to reduce the cost of construction. So I added that back in, and then also early childhood family education with the school district. Their footprint did grow a little bit as well, so I wanted to put a buffer in there for that. So that's the difference in cost there, if you notice that. And then just some images of what an indoor playground might look like, a learning kitchen, meeting common spaces, more meeting type common spaces. And, on this image shows a sports dome, but it shows the walking track. We felt it was important to show that walking track because I think that gets forgotten a lot, that the anticipation is to make sure we have a walking track around the inside of that sports dome to supplement the on-field activities going on in that dome. So moving on to aquatics. We recently met with an aquatic specialist from Stantec, Mr. Jim Mayland, to try to get some help for us, for us to be able to better explain and give options to the council to consider and give the council a better understanding of what those options are and how they might impact the city both now and in the future. So I'm going to start with some generalized information on aquatics that I think are worth considering. Once again, all information we took in from him during our meeting. Number one is indoor versus outdoor aquatics. This was in your packet. I believe you've had time to review it. If you have questions on anything specific, let me know. I'm not going to go through each individual one. But to summarize, indoor pools are 365 days a year potentially. You're not going to get as much usage per day. It's going to be, typically the usage of an indoor pool and outdoor pool are going to be similar. If anything, an outdoor pool actually gets more attendance. But of course, it's in a 3-month period versus a potentially 365-day period. But there's cost to that. So an indoor pool, you have to put up walls and some significant HVAC systems, dehumidification systems, and you're not going to get as much bang for your dollar by because you have to put it in the walls and have that HVAC system, so you can't have as much square footage. So, in summary, an indoor pool is going to be more expensive to build. It's going to be more expensive to operate in the long term, but it is going to give you more days of usage throughout the swimming season. It's going to extend your swimming season. And then obviously there's aesthetics and other things that play into the outdoor pool versus indoor pool. And you'll see some of those as we go through the images later. All right, so realistic market capacity. So the first thing I need to do is I need to define what bather load is. That's always an interesting term. Bather load is defined as the usage capacity of a given facility. So there's a square footage of aquatic area, how many people can safely use, can be in those aquatic areas. So that's the definition of bather load. So when we combine community demographics, so Cottage Grove demographics and also secondary demographics, secondary market area demographics, and we compare those with local and national aquatics data, how people are swimming in today's world. When we compare those two things, then we can determine the bather load demand of our community. Basically, bather load demand is how we right size a facility for us, right, based on our demographics. So this chart shows estimated population of 38,000. If you go with 3% of population, you have about a 1,200 bather load. If you go with an 8% population, about 3,000. If you try to get somewhere in the middle of that, that's about 2,000 bathers. Now it's different. An indoor aquatic facility, that's going to be a much smaller bather load. Outdoor is going to be a much higher bather load because it's a limited swimming season, and obviously in Minnesota, people think swimming June, July, and August, not so much on the outside months, so you can get by with a lower bather load in indoor facilities, needs to be much higher on the outdoor facilities. Typical operational cost recovery, an indoor pool is going to recover cost about 30 to 50% with revenue, so there'll be a 70 to 50% shortfall of operational costs, and then an outdoor pool typically can get 75 to 100% cost recovery. And with our analysis of the local, with neighboring communities, that seems to be a very accurate number. It's a broad number, but that's kind of the range that they fall in. So moving on to options for aquatics for our community center. Option B is a simple wading pool along with a small splash pad. It adds about $2.5 million of the project, adds another $50,000 to $150,000 in operational costs depending on how big of a footprint you have and things like that. I should reiterate that everything on here is conceptual in nature. We haven't gotten into any fine details. We would do more spec planning, spec work and detailed planning as funding becomes available after the referendum. So these are all conceptual designs, but we feel comfortable with these designs to get numbers and concepts out to the community to educate them and give them the opportunity, the best opportunity to make an educated vote if there is if and when there's a referendum. So that's option B. Option C would be an indoor small aquatic play area. That adds about $9 million of the project. A good example would be Inver Grove Heights. Please disregard the lap pool in the back. This is just for the small player area that you see in the foreground. So there is a small, where the slide comes out, there would be a small, it'd be a little bit bigger than that actually, but a small swimming well, but not enough to do laps or things like that. So mostly focused on the play area, zero depth entry, interactive features, warm water spa, and then a couple of slides. Bather load capacity of something like that would be about 260. Another couple of images of that. Option D would be an outdoor family aquatic center, $32.1 million, so it adds about $11 million to the project. An example is New Hope. They haven't actually opened that facility because of COVID. They just recently finished construction, but a lot of good images, which I'll show you here. Anticipated operational loss would be anywhere between zero to an extra anywhere between $0 and $200,000 $200,000 depending on what all you're building and providing there. So includes quite a bit in here. 8-lane lap pool competition, diving board, drop slide. You'll notice some with a zero depth entry, but you'll notice a shallow, like a lazy river. That could be a lazy river, it could be an exercise pool, it could be both. So once again, conceptually, it's there, and you can use it for all sorts of different things. Lots of play areas, twin body slide, water walk, basketball area, group rent, and then I should have mentioned the landscaping. So you would make it a tropical type experience. You'd have perhaps sand play. You'd have areas for picnicking or sunbathing or things like that. So, bather load of something like that would be, for New Hope was 1,200. For Cottage Grove, I would recommend a little bit higher based on the bather load data we saw earlier. So some images of what that might look like. I think I described most of that, but the slides and the lazy river. It's a smaller lazy river than you might see a Cascade Water Bay and things like that, but very functional. And what's nice about those lazy rivers is they get used during the day by families and kids, and then at night, they actually, early mornings and nights, they get used a lot by exercisers, especially seniors. And you can see how you can incorporate the landscape and things like that to make it beyond, experiences beyond just the pool. Would have a concession area as well, whereas I think in an indoor pool, you typically don't have concession areas for those unless there's a need for those, need for food and beverage service for other amenities in the community center. Good image of the, conceptual image of the entire layout of the property there. And then option E would be an indoor small aquatic play area similar to that option B or option C with Inver Grove Heights, but adding a open air roof. It's something we've studied. We haven't studied in enough detail to know exactly what it would cost, but I think we have enough data to get us to a number at about $37.5 million. We think the operational loss would be between $400,000 and $650,000, which would be similar to any other indoor aquatic facility. And the roof essentially retracts, so you can have some essentially open air during those summer months. Also reduces some chemical and HVAC costs by being able to open the roof. And then it also it's clear glass, so you can swim under the stars at night and things like that as well. Option F, indoor small aquatic area plus the lap pool, so similar to that Inver Grove with the lap pool, so $37.5 million, so adding about $16 million, $16.5 million to the project. Same thing as the last slide, estimated annual operational cost loss of about $400,000 to $650,000 per year for that type of facility. So for council to discuss tonight, we're looking for some direction on the schedule and aquatics. I guess I'd like to toss it back over to the mayor to start with talking about schedule.
There we go. All right. First, I guess, I don't know if, Zach, if there was any questions that council has regarding the different aquatics items specifically. I know the reason the open air discussion came in is we had heard from a vendor, if you will, that there's many, including YMCA's actually around the country now, they're starting to utilize that program. And so we wanted to see, because one of the things that Zach was sharing with you is we've been hearing that, the reason that indoor pools don't do as well, especially during the summer months, is because no one wants to be inside when the weather's nice outside. So the idea was if you had an open roof, or an ability to open it or close it, depending on weather, that would give you an opportunity to utilize the pool more. Either way, it's still very expensive to operate that. So I didn't know if the council had any questions as it relates to any of the water features at the moment. But I guess what we'll do then, if you would, is have a discussion first about the schedule. As council is aware, and I mentioned it earlier, the intent was given last year that we would go to referendum this coming November in the national election. But due to, my opinion, is due to the COVID situation and kind of, I'll call it the unstable economy right now and all the things that we're trying to do to support businesses and such. My personal opinion, and I've said this before earlier, and I'll say it again, I think this council knows that my desire is to get this before the voters, to let them decide once and for all, do they want a community center in our community? But I also want to be cognizant of both the financial impact, both from a city's perspective, but also from an individual taxpayer. And we did get to see some of the numbers, and Zach didn't necessarily show them in there. But we do have some numbers that obviously give us to what an average household would pay per month on these different scenarios, and it varies in price from a couple bucks to I think $8 a month, I think was even the most expensive one, I believe. I'm just doing that a little bit off of memory. But my recommendation, and then I'll open to the council, my recommendation would be to not go to a referendum question for this November. And we can then, as a council, once we get through this coming election period and kind of see how things are going as we get through the fall into the early winter months, if things are turning around economically as well as with the COVID situation, that we kind of revisit this, whatever our decision is for tonight on the other stuff, revisit this for an opportunity to discuss a referendum possibly next year sometime. More than likely, I was talking to our administrator, we would do it, my desire, if we were to do it next year, because it'll give us time, would be a November election next year, because there is one. There's a school board election, so it isn't like we're doing a special election for the referendum. And then just to put it out there for this group, and I guess people that might be watching online right now, the school district, of course, postponed their plans similar to what we're talking about tonight for any referendum question for the school district that they were initially planning for February of this next year. They have pushed that off. I believe at the moment they're going to revisit it next year also, but not for next year. It would be February of 2022. So I just wanted to keep everybody abreast of all the players and all the things that are going on and what may be before us. So that is my personal opinion. I think we, as a council, would be best if we say, let's hold off on the referendum for 2020, and we'll revisit the process, see how the economy is doing in January of 2021, to see if we want to move forward with a referendum question sometime in 2021 or thereafter at that point in time. So, council?
I would agree to that.
Okay, Councilmember Thiede?
I agree as well.
Okay. Councilmember Olson?
So just to be clear, what we're talking about here is simply the decision to delay.
Yes.
So essentially to make the call that we're not looking at this fall, and then at a future point, based on the information we receive, we'll talk about sort of when in the future.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't need to decide tonight on a future date.
No,
Okay.
I'm just giving you a suggestion, because one of the things that I wanted to make sure, as part of the reason we had a conversation about doing it in a quote-unquote national election period, is to get the most amount of voters to go to the polls and give us their opinion, right? I'm not looking to do a special election, and so my question was, is there another election next year? And there is, from a school board perspective. Now, it's not a national election, but the fact is there'll be a purpose for people to go to the polls. This would be another reason for people to go to the polls. And so that's what I'm thinking. I'm not saying that we'll do something early or anything like that. Personally, that's not my intent, but that is a council decision that would be discussed at a future date.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to certainly make the decision to pull it off a potential November 2020 ballot based on the fact that, we're in mid-June right now. And so even just informing the public of what the various components could potentially look like, and then, should there be a decision to add an aquatics element too, that just doesn't give people very much time to process that information and make decisions. So I guess I would agree to not have it this fall.
Okay.
I agree.
Councilman Dennis, that's
I
it.
agree, yep.
Real good. Now, Jennifer, do we need an official motion on this one, or we're okay at this point, right?
We'll bring it back to you in January, it sounds
Bring
like.
it back in January. So the other part of this is the aquatics discussion. Zach did provide us a variety of different options. I know council's had an opportunity to look through some of these options prior to the meeting this evening. And really what I think staff and Zach is looking for, so that they can kind of hone in on more of the numbers and the size and all that kind of stuff before we get to January of this next year. One is, do we want to add aquatics to this center, I guess is the first question. And the second one would be is, do you have a preference? He gave us a variety of different ideas and a variety of different price ranges, obviously different options. I would just share with you mine, and then we'll ask council for your ideas. I do think, based on what we heard from the public, specifically after we initially put out the first discussion of a referendum, with the pieces that were making up our community center, that was probably the biggest part of the backlash, I would say, that we got as a council from the public was we did not have any type of a water component or water park. And so the fact is, through some general conversations between council and the staff members, over the months and hearing from the public, there's been a feeling that we should revisit this, which is why we're here today. I would, after looking through everything and seeing the different options, the financial ability or the financial capacities and things like that, and what you would get, I think, with an outdoor water park versus doing something indoor, which would, just based on the price ranges and such, would be very much smaller in scale, and not, I don't think, have the types of amenities that I think the public's looking for, from what I'm hearing. And a lot of the pictures you see, matter of fact, on the screen that's on there right now, a lot of those pictures are from the Apple Valley one, I believe.
Right.
Not Cascade Bay, what is?
Apple Valley Family Aquatic Center.
Family Aquatic Center. So, and the one that we've been kind of gearing ourselves off of, because I thought was kind of unique and different, was New Hope, which you mentioned is the one that you saw kind of the schematic idea of what that would be, though it sounds like Zach was saying ours would probably have to be a little bit bigger per se because of the bather load expectations within the community. So my personal opinion at this point would be I would go more towards that option with the outdoor aquatics. And then the only other thing I want to throw out there, just I'm going to bring that and then just throw one thing out there, is as you're going forward with this planning process, I do want to make sure that however we put this on the site, because we've seen different diagrams and different ideas, I still would like to make sure that we have the opportunity to add, maybe a public library on the site, maybe a fitness component, if you will, not necessarily run by the city, I'm saying, whether it's a YMCA or a private company that we would team up with. And if one doesn't fit versus the other, one of the things I am hearing from some of the public, and I heard from a couple earlier this evening, was, if we do create this synergistic type community center with all the, the pieces to it, it would make total sense for us to revisit a conversation at some point in time here with the county as it relates to a library at that particular time. Because I know they're not planning to do anything specific with the current library other than some minor improvements. And I think they're kind of waiting for us to, my belief is, they're waiting for us to kind of make a decision about what we're going to do. And it's totally understandable on their part, especially now since we're going to delay the vote. But, sorry, my comment is go with the outdoor option and just come back with some ideas on, space and making sure everything can fit. Okay? You want to?
Sure.
Councilmember Dennis?
Thank you. And looking at all of these, I mean, there were some really neat plans that were out there. I do agree with what the mayor said. There was a tremendous amount of feedback coming out of the community questioning, well, why is there not a water component to this? So, we're in a interesting situation here relative to the time we're in, how the country's doing financially, how people are doing financially. So again, it's a prudent thing to take a step back from this at the moment. As we look at this and what the options are, in my opinion, the one that I think would appeal most to people probably would be option D. And so that's the outdoor opportunity. And one of the things that I liked about that was we had a proposed capture rate of 75 to 100% to help offset the cost of that. So as we've done at some of the other facilities here, amenities that we have in the community, whether it was, dismantling the old business incubator or, the work that was done down at the golf course, the work that was done at the ice arena. We've worked effectively to put a business program together that helped us to balance those books out. Now, I know this is a little different. I don't know that there's any community centers, any place that do truly make money. But what people will have to do, and this is why it has to get into the hands of the voters, people have to make a decision. And we're providing the opportunity to have an informed decision, right? With all of these options and let people see what's out there. You kind of have to wrap your mind around the fact that this is an amenity to the community. And it's not necessarily something that's gonna, make us money, although we'll certainly try to do everything possible to get it to a point that we lessen the financial impact as much as possible. But item D, outdoor pool, and I think what we do is we keep open the potential for that library, should we be able to work something out with the county on it. The only other point that I'll make, and you brought up about the workout or fitness facility component, I think we'll have to be very careful in terms of looking at the amount of space that we actually have because, adding the water feature is going to take up a lot of square footage. And so we still have to have places for people to park and to be able to get in there, conveniently. Otherwise, we'll be hearing about that. And we want to, try to set this up here in an opportunity to win if that's what the people decide to do. So I think it's very respectful on our part to offer that. I also want to go back to the one original thing that you said, that we sought to have this happen on a presidential election year, because I think all of us agree that the most fair thing we can do is give the greatest number of people the opportunity to weigh in. And so I know that if it does come next year, if that's what the will of the council is, you know more than anyone, it'll be just a small percentage of the overall. If it was something, again, we look at the economy, how things are going. If it was something that could be moved to 2022 as a possibility, we're going to get about another 40%, maybe more of the people. So whatever that number ends up being, again, I like the idea of getting more people to weigh in on it. I just think that's the right thing to do for everybody.
Okay. Actually, I'll just go right around the room if you guys are okay with that. Councilmember Thiede.
So obviously, I think that the water would be fun. There's some challenges, obviously, as we know, with the water and those features. And one of the things I think is we should put our thinking caps on and think of what could we do that could be unique, okay, versus all the other ones, and something that would be a draw to bring people from other areas into that. The other thing I was thinking is it possible for a financial standpoint to kind of do this in stages, to have a plan so that everything's kind of in a plan, but you do this, and then the next year you add this, the next year you add this, or would it just end up being like fixed costs would be, it just wouldn't be as feasible. But, I'm just thinking of different ways to make this more affordable. The other thing that with its proximity to Ravine Park and the potential for the passageway underneath the Keats and so forth. The other question I would have is well, in terms of trying to make it more unique or something, or is there a way to work with Washington County to make kind of almost like a little bit of a regional water park? And you might have certain things on the, in Cottage View, and you might have some things in the park, and you might even be able to put some additional features in or something like that. So those are kind of some things that I was thinking there. And in terms of putting a cover over something, we were talking about even a sports field, a recreational field that we'd put a bubble over, per se. So maybe there could be, whatever we look at doing from a water park, maybe there'd be a option to put a bubble over a certain portion of it or something like that, that could in fact be used year-round. May not be the entire water park, but maybe a piece of it or something like that. Just different thoughts like that.
Okay.
But I think it'd be great if we could figure out some way to get some water feature in there.
You have and maybe you said it, I apologize if I missed it. Do you have a preference of, I know you said you'd like to do a.
I would take and find the most unique things about all of them and put it together and just not, I mean, there's interesting ideas in all of those, I was even thinking at one point, could you make a lazy river somehow that you had some pumps and things like that in there such that it could make use of hills that you might have? Or, where you might have one part that you, in your inner tubes, that you'd flow down, a little, or different things. I mean, I'd like to think that we could maybe put our thinking caps on, and again, obviously, if it's too unique, then it gets way too expensive, but, so it's a kind of, maybe I'm up in the clouds again, but, it's, the challenge is to make it somewhat unique and make it fun, make it, that way, but also keep it inexpensive.
All right. Councilmember Mills?
Thanks, Mayor. So I think, revisiting, looking at the aquatic feature, I think that was made loud and clear. I do still have a tiny concern of some of the folks wanting that indoor piece. And again, not to go all the way in the clouds, if there's any way to even have a piece of it inside might be interesting to peek at. But as far as the cost goes, I think as much as those retractable roofs could be really cool, I don't think we want to go that route. And so I agree with was it D?
Yeah.
Is that the
option D
one?
is the
Option
outdoor.
D. I do have a question though, Zach. If you could maybe explain a little bit, and maybe you don't have all the information, but you had mentioned that New Hope was smaller because that we'd need a larger bather. So bather capacity, I think is what you said?
Bather load demand.
Bather load demand, okay. Use the right terminology. Is that figured with just the area that would be using it, or is it the population of just the city? Because I'm thinking New Hope, New Hope is smaller than us. However, the community around it probably comes in more. I don't know, it's just a thought.
Councilmember Mills, that's a great question, and actually was in my notes, and I missed it as I was going through the presentation. But part of the reason I'm recommending that higher bather load would be in the East Metro and Washington County, as a matter of fact, there's a lack of outdoor aquatic options. So if we went to an outdoor aquatic option, our secondary market area, we would have a much larger draw as compared to building an ice arena or a ball field or things like that, where that secondary market area, we might not be able to draw as much from. We definitely would have a much larger draw for an outdoor aquatic facility from that secondary market area. There is one down in Hastings, but that's a much smaller facility, and it's out of the county, and it's a little bit down the way, so.
Do you know how, what their size is and how busy they really are? I haven't been down there in so long, because.
So they probably have a 900 to 1,000 bather load. We'd be recommending more, and I can't answer tonight, but more in that 1,500-1,600 for sure, if not up to 2,000.
And is Hastings, I'm assuming you've talked to them, their how busy they are? Are they usually quite busy in that?
Yeah, they do a pretty good job of filling it up, and I think because it's a smaller pool and they don't have as much capacity, they lose about $100,000 a year on their operations. But they do a pretty good job of filling it up. I mean, it's all weather dependent, right? When Minnesotans think of swimming, they think of June, July, and August. And that's when they want to get out the most, and then they pack in the facilities. And that's the challenge with the indoor facilities is those well, one, in the summer, they're not gonna go in and swim unless they're in a program and then, or a swimming lesson. And then secondarily, they're not thinking about swimming that much in the winter either. So you have a much lower demand there. But Hastings they're doing well with what they have there. It's just a smaller load.
Okay, I appreciate your information there. Thank
Yeah.
you, Zach. So, anyway.
Okay, sounds good. Councilmember Olson?
Zach,
Yes.
let's take a walk down memory lane, shall we? Councilmember Mills brought up Hastings. You did extensive research on the Hastings facility back in 2011 and early 2012 in preparation for a referendum that went to the voters in the fall of 2012. We had a two-question referendum. The referendum, question one, was regarding $6.5 million to be dedicated towards a outdoor aquatics facility that would, in essence, be modeled after that Hastings facility. Some variations, but similar in style and approach. And I know that you spoke extensively with the team down in Hastings at that time about, their construction costs and bather load. I remember that phrase and some other things. The second question on that referendum in 2012 had to do with a $7 million expense for the improvement of Hamlet Park. We had tried to, as my friend Council Member Dennis likes to say, rip the Band-Aid off all at one time and get Hamlet Park done. Both referendums failed spectacularly. The 2012 referendum question on the pool resulted in 19,000 votes. That was more votes than were cast in the mayoral election that year, and we had, 74 candidates for mayor or something that year. There were about 17,000 votes cast for the mayor. Mayor Bailey was successful resoundingly with 53% of the vote. 17,000 votes cast for mayor, 19,000 votes cast on that referendum question, and that question lost with 64% of the voters saying not interested. The same number of voters voted on question two on Hamlet Park, and that also lost spectacularly, 62,000, or 62% on 19,000 votes. So, as my esteemed colleague said earlier, we need to let the people decide, and we have tried to do that previously unsuccessfully. A lot of work went into that 2012 referendum, a lot. A lot of research. We had a task force that came together. We actually had a phone survey that we conducted in the spring that year, where people said on the phone, "I'm all in." Yes, we thought we had about 70% of the community in support, but the referendum question failed. So the reason I bring that up is we have talked for years and years and years as a community about a community center. And we continue to hear, this is what we want, this is what we need, this is what we want, the city needs it in the worst way. But it has gone to the voters twice and it's been unsuccessful. The difference here, though, is what went to the voters the first time, so before 2012, was essentially a building. And what went to the voters in 2012 was an aquatics facility. And now we're looking at the potential of bringing those two disparate elements together in one sort of big, hey, this is what we're going to do if the voters approve. And I think there's some value to that. I think the dome conversation is a great conversation. To your point earlier, in the East Metro, Washington County, there's a huge draw there. There's a huge need for it. And so it appears as though there would be some synergy. I'm either going to the dome for a thing, so I'm gonna come a little early and attend the water park, or I'm gonna stay late and attend the water park. looking at how those two elements could work together, it seems as though that New Hope model that you mentioned makes the most sense. Because there is the outdoor element, the weather cooperates, it's, getting together with my friends. It's not the swimming lessons and sort of the more formalized stuff that you're gonna do with an indoor facility. It's more that, that recreational swimmer. And there's some pretty neat things that are in there. But what I really wanna stress is, as we look at this, if we go down this path of bolting on an aquatics facility to the plan that was already, agreed upon last August, and I wasn't part of the council at that time, so I can't speak intelligently about that. I did sit through the meetings and I heard the feedback and all the rest of it. I think you have a greater chance for success if you provide that aquatics element. And I think you even have a greater chance for success if you can get the library on board, which I know the mayor's been working very hard at for quite some time, and we haven't quite gotten to a place yet where we've got that partnership nailed down. But we've got to be crystal clear with the voters, regardless of what we decide, and whenever we decide to do it, we've got to be very clear to the voters, like, this is it. This is the facility that we continue to hear about and continue to be asked about. And now it's this close to being a reality, you just need to vote yes. But if we are not successful, I don't know that we can revisit this again in the future anytime soon. I mean, I think we need to give people the option. I think we need to be very clear about what that option looks like. I think we need to have a detailed analysis and do all the work. So, great idea that we're pushing this back so that we can do that work. But it has to be extremely well-defined if we hope to have the possibility of success. Because when we tried in 2012, it did not go well.
Mayor? Thank you, Councilman Olson, and I'll go down history lane with you anytime.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm a context guy, so we had to learn from that, right?
Sure.
There was mistakes made on how we communicated. We were pretty vague with what we told the people they were getting. And I think that's the biggest lesson we learned. So 100% with you, whatever we do, it has to be crystal clear with what the voters are gonna get, what their options are, what it's gonna cost them, right? So that's our primary goal in this. And you talked about a community unifier. That has been the message from the task force to the individual meetings with council. This community center needs to be a unifier. That 2012 vote, that was 3 separate facilities and 3 separate spaces. And we learned from that. So everything we've been talking about with the community center is a community gathering space, a unifying space. So great comments, right on page with what we're trying to give the community the option to vote on.
Yeah, and I would just share that, as Councilmember Olson probably remembers, it was quite a different time around then, too. The other thing I think we learned from that situation, too, is there was not if you will, a separate group that was out there championing the community center idea, but there was a group out there pushing against it. So I think that's really, when people hear all the negatives, just kind of like on social media now, if you only hear one side of the thing, you don't hear both sides, you're tending to lean one direction. So I do know that there is, a separate group that has spoken to me and Zach and so on, that wants to get together. I've seen the list of people that want to be involved in getting this through and getting the information out to the public. As you all know, the city can't go out and quote unquote market this. We have to share with them what what it is, what it's gonna look like, and what the cost is. It's somebody else that has to go out there, a group has to go out there and actually, door knock or get flyers out or do whatever they gotta do to do that. Similar to what you see with school referendums and so on. So I do think that was a key difference. And again, I think you nailed it too, with one spot, one location, one place where you can get it all. versus having to pop in different parts of the town, so to speak. I know we got parks all over town, that's different though. In this particular case, I think what we're doing is putting it out there before the public and saying this is it. And waiting right now, I think is, I mean, I guess we've been talking a lot tonight about listening, right? Listening to our community. I think, us revisiting this on both things. One is we are hearing and feeling from the community that everybody's a little nervous about the economy and that. We hear you. This council is saying we'll wait. We'll wait. We want this, but we'll wait. Second thing is we heard you. We heard you, the community. You wanted water. You want something to take your kids to, your grandkids to, and so on. We hear you. This is what we're proposing. This is an idea. It'll be a little different, a little bit, probably a little bigger, but we are listening and we are hearing what the public is telling us. So I just wanted to, first of all, thanks, Zach, for putting all this together. I know we've been ebbing and Jennifer and everyone, we've been ebbing and flowing this. Robin, you probably have run so many numbers of different scenarios. What's interesting to me, at least, is the number doesn't fluctuate too much, which is kind of interesting. And I know part of that is because our city continues to grow, and as we keep building more homes, that dollar spreads out. So the cost per household is dropping, even from the time that we saw the initial numbers, which was kind of interesting. I don't know if you caught that as you look at these numbers. So we're actually able to get more now for the bang for our buck, if you will, because of the growth that we're having in our community. So it's not costing each individual homeowner as much. But that's, I think you got the direction now on both of them.
Very clear, thank you.
Was there any other information or anything, Robin, Jennifer, anybody needs from the council at this point?
Appreciate it, thank you.
All right. Council, good? Good on that? All right, so thank you for the public who may still be watching to find out what's going on with the community center. So the council does have one more item this evening, and that is a workshop session, which is closed to the public. And this is the city administrator's performance evaluation. This is the kind of our annual thing that when we hired Administrator Levitt to this position, she asked for us to give her basically quarterly updates. We had to push this back a little bit because of COVID and all that kind of stuff, so we actually meet in person. So I just want to mention that we are going to be doing that. It is closed to the public, and that is pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subsection 3, and the reason for this is to conduct a performance evaluation of City Administrator Jennifer Levitt. So we won't be adjourning the meeting in here. Jennifer will be joining council in which room are we going in? St. Croix room. And so everybody have a great evening in this now. Thanks.